C1356 Southern Stronghold. Chapter 1356 Southern Stronghold. 1356 Southern Stronghold. After traveling for several more days, Tianyang and Huang Shaoli finally encountered something that wasn't a magical beast. "Excuse me. Do you know where the nearest city is located?" Tianyang approached a cultivator who had just finished defeating a magical beast. However, this cultivator immediately became wary of him and went into a combative stance. Tianyang quickly raised his hand when he saw this, and he tried to assure the cultivator that they meant no harm. "Please wait. We are not here to harm you. We're simply lost." Unsurprisingly, the cultivator did not even twitch at his words and remained wary. They were currently on the desolate continent, where laws do not apply and only one rule applies: the law of the jungle, where the strong prey on the weak. In this world, it was a common occurrence for cultivators to engage in acts of murder and theft. Those lacking the strength to protect themselves would inevitably fall victim to exploitation. Tianyang was well aware of this rule, but they were not in a position to ignore another human after spending an entire week wandering and lost in this dangerous land. Do I really look that stupid to you? You say you're lost? That's funny, considering that the nearest city is only a mile from here." The cultivator sneered in disdain. "Really? Is that true?" Tianyang was pleasantly surprised to learn this information. "I must admit you were pretty good at acting. If I was even a little dumber, I would have believed you," the cultivator said. Tianyang was speechless, but he didn't bother attempting to convince the cultivator otherwise, having already obtained the information he needed. He turned around and returned to Huang Shaoli. "The city is only a mile away." "That's great. I can finally clean myself." She shed blissful tears imagining herself in a bathtub. Tianyang proceeded to carry her into the air before flying towards the city, leaving the cultivator dumbfounded. Were they truly lost? He mumbled to himself. They had tried searching from the air a few days ago, but they didn't see anything, even attracting the attention of several flying magical beasts, an experience that nearly cost them their lives, so they avoided entering the air from that point forth. Now that he was aware of a nearby city, Tianyang didn't have to worry about any flying magical beasts, as magical beasts tend to avoid the cities. Sometime later, Tianyang arrived at the city, which happened to be the southern stronghold, a conclusion he had come to days before after only encountering magical beasts between the level of Spirit Lord and Spirit King. "The city isn't as safe as one might think, so stay close to me even when we are inside," Tianyang warned. "Okay." Huang Shaoli immediately grabbed onto his robe like a child who didn't want to separate from their parent in a crowded street, an action that had become a habit of hers. Tianyang entered the city shortly. Since it was a city owned by nobody, there was no need to pay entrance fees like one normally would. "Let's find a place to clean ourselves before we look for any information about your family," Tianyang suggested. "Let's," she immediately agreed. The interior of the city was rough and barely developed, resembling that of a rural city. The buildings looked as if they were built without any plans or approval, so there were gaps of all sizes between each building. The street was impressively vast, adorned with numerous merchants showcasing their wares on blankets as they sat behind them, eager to make sales. Most of these merchants also had surprisingly high cultivation, which explained their boldness to display their treasures in a place where one could steal in broad daylight. After looking around for an entire hour, they only managed to find a single crude-looking hotel. Not wanting to walk around with dirt and mud sticking to their body for even a second longer than they had to, they settled for the hotel, which also had a tremendous price tag that even luxurious hotels couldn't compare. Small rooms are 50 spirit stones and the bigger rooms will cost 100 spirit stones with a time limit of 3 days. "Do your rooms have a bathtub?" Huang Shaoli asked. "We have 2 rooms with bathtubs, but one of them is already occupied. The cost will be 200 spirit stones for 3 days. "I don't have that kind of money," Tianyang said to Huang Shaoli. Huang Shaoli suddenly realized that this was her chance to be helpful and immediately took out 200 spirit stones, placing them before the manager. "Well, take that room. Thank you for your business. Here is your key. We will notify you the day before your time is up. Let's go." Huang Shaoli grabbed Tianyang's hand and dragged him to their room. When they entered the room, they were shocked by how small it turned out to be. This is their most luxurious room. This isn't even worth a silver a night, much less 100 spirit stones. Huang Shaoli felt scammed. Upon opening the door to their room, they were greeted by a room that was twice as spacious as Tianyang's room in the Raging Serpent, but that doesn't say much when considering the size of his room. Moreover, there was only a single large bed in the room. Besides that, the bathroom was in a separate room, which was even smaller than Tianyang's room in the Raging Serpent and only had enough room to fit a medium-sized bathtub. Compared to what she was normally used to, the hotel's room couldn't even compare to a pig pen. However, since they were mostly there for the bathtub, they didn't complain too much. Huang Xiaoli entered the bathroom first and she wouldn't come back out for 3 whole hours. Even scrubbing her entire body over 10 times wouldn't require that amount of time, so Tianyang couldn't imagine what she was doing inside. Naturally, he didn't actually spend any time doing such pointless acts. Instead, he focused on improving his cultivation. C1357 Searching for the Huang Family. Chapter 1357 Searching for the Huang Family. 1357 Searching for the Huang Family. After spending 3 hours in the bathroom, Huang Xiaoli came out looking like she'd experienced rebirth. Her brown skin had returned to its smooth jade-like complexion. Her sticky and messy hair became as straight as a sword, with each strand shimmering like an ocean basked in sunlight. The worst part, her foul smell that was caused by her accident was completely gone, replaced by a sweet fragrance. "Thank you for the fresh clothes. I washed the old one for you." Huang Xiaoli handed him the first pair of uniforms he gave her in the very beginning. "Also, hurry up and wash yourself. You smell like a beggar," she said while pinching her nose. Because she also smelled like a beggar before her shower, she didn't notice the foul smell. However, now that she was completely cleaned up, Tianyang's odor became very distinct and intense to her. "As you wish, princess," Tianyang jokingly said as he entered the bathroom. He came back out half an hour later to see Huang Xiaoli lying on the bed, seemingly deep asleep. Not wanting to disturb her, he sat on the cold floor and returned to his cultivation. Huang Xiaoli would not wake up for another 2 days. "I fell asleep by accident," she exclaimed when she woke up. "Don't worry, it was only 2 days this time," he smiled. "2 days? I didn't try to wake you up this time, if you're wondering." Huang Xiaoli felt really guilty for wasting so much time when it could have been spent looking for her parents, but she couldn't help herself as she was exhausted from all that traveling. "Are you ready to look for your parents?" Tianyang asked. "Of course," she said as she jumped off the bed. "Wait, before we leave, I think you should disguise yourself a little." "What's wrong with my appearance?" She raised an eyebrow. "You will attract too much attention if you go out in that appearance," he explained. Huang Xiaoli blushed after hearing his words. Does this mean he actually finds me attractive? He's not blind after all. She felt relieved to know that Tianyang was not someone who couldn't see beauty. Had been acting so normal around her that she'd begun to doubt her own beauty. "Give me a minute." Huang Xiaoli retrieved a box of makeup and proceeded to apply it to her face. In mere minutes, Huang Xiaoli changed her appearance from that of a peerless beauty to an extraordinarily handsome young man. This shocking transformation that was done with pills greatly surprised Tianyang, who didn't know the capabilities of a woman's makeup until this moment. To make her disguise even more convincing, Huang Xiaoli tied her hair into a ponytail just like Tianyang. "What do you think?" she asked him afterward, her tone carrying a hint of pride. "Makes me wonder if I've been looking at your real face or not this entire..." Huang Xiaoli suddenly swung her leg at him, interrupting him. "I'm just joking." Tianyang released her leg shortly after catching it. "You look like an actual man, I'm quite impressed. I wanted to look a little less beautiful, but it's hard to do so without making my face look unnatural," she said, unknowingly sounding narcissistic. Tianyang did not respond to such words. Sometime later they left the room and went downstairs. "Oh, perfect. I was going to let you know that you only have 1 day left," the manager said to them. "If you want to continue using the room, you have to pay for another 3 days right now. If not, you won't be able to keep the room if someone else were to rent it even if you are still living in it. You can check us out now since we won't be coming back," Tianyang said. "If you say so." Tianyang returned the room key before leaving the building. "How should we go about finding my family?" Huang Xiaoli asked. "We can start by asking around. We should start with the merchants since they have been here the longest and would have seen the most people," he suggested. "Sounds good." They approached the merchants and began their search. "Hello, I am looking for some people. Have you seen a family of 3 around recently? They should have a young boy around 10 years old with them," Huang Xiaoli asked. However, the merchant remained silent, only throwing up a money sign using his hand. Huang Xiaoli didn't hesitate and handed him 5 spirit stones. "I haven't seen them," the merchant said. Huang Xiaoli felt like she got scammed again, but there was nothing she could do. She repeated the same thing with the other merchants. "Have you seen a family of 3 with a young boy recently? Have you seen a middle-aged man at the 3rd level spirit lord recently?" "You have." "Really?" Was he with a woman and a young boy? At the end of the day, Huang Shaoli had spent almost 300 spirit stones without obtaining any information about her family. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but this is... Huang Shaoli had a dejected look on her face. Then she became angry. Half of them were scammers and the other half were liars. I can't believe the people in this place. Is there not a single decent person in this place? You aren't used to the real world, are you? Tianyang could tell that she had lived a sheltered life and was still naive about how the world operated. Is it really that obvious? She sighed. Yes. He nodded without hesitation. I've spent most of my life at home with most of my knowledge taught by my parents. I've only started seeing the outside world when I joined the Immortal monastery as a disciple. She admitted to having a lack of experience. You may be naive now, but you have plenty of time to learn and grow. Tianyang tried to comfort her. Thank you. She responded with a forced smile. C1358 Teleportation Array. Chapter 1358 Teleportation Array. 1358 Teleportation Array. If you have the time to complain, let's use it to continue our search, Tianyang said to her. Okay. After spending a few more days asking thousands of people around the southern stronghold, they were still unable to find Huang Shaoli's parents. Hey Tianyang, you came here to train, right? Are you sure you want to spend so much time here? I think I can do this by myself. Huang Shaoli suddenly said to him. I've had enough life-or-death situations for now. I want to take it easy for a bit, he calmly said. Moreover, I am still trying to solidify my previous breakthrough. Until I am fully used to my new strength, it'll help you. Thank you. Huang Shaoli mumbled. With that being said, we've spent an entire week in this place without learning anything about your family. I think it's safe to assume that they never made it here, he continued a moment later. What else can we do? It's not like we can go to the other cities. We'll most likely die before we even make it there. Huang Shaoli released a hopeless sigh. Tianyang maintained a moment of silence before speaking. Actually, there is a way to visit the other cities without encountering any magical beasts, but it'll be very expensive, hence why I hadn't brought it up until now. What method? The array masters have made a breakthrough in their techniques not long ago. They call it the teleportation array, which will allow anyone to teleport from array to array as long as these arrays are set up. However, it costs a tremendous amount of spiritual energy for each use, so they have to keep feeding the array spirit stones or treasures to keep it functioning. I've heard my father mention this teleportation array to his fellow array masters before. Huang Shaoli said. Your father was an array master? Tianyang didn't know this and was quite surprised to learn it, as array masters are rare existences in the divine heavens. Yes, he's only a level 2 array master though. That's still plenty impressive. Anyways, these teleportation arrays are available on the desolate continent, correct? How much would it cost to use these arrays? Huang Shaoli proceeded to ask. I'm not sure since they price it based on the distance. It could be anywhere from several hundred spirit stones to several thousand, if not even more. If it's just several thousand, it won't be a problem, she declared in a confident tone. Tianyang was speechless, and he asked what had been on his mind for some time now. Just how rich are you? I only have about 300,000 spirit stones left, she responded nonchalantly. Only 300,000. That's a lot. Why are you even carrying around so much money? Tianyang exclaimed in a shocked voice. I don't usually carry so much with me, but since we were going to the desolate continent, known for rare treasures, I planned on buying a thing or two, she said. Just so you know, I always have less than 10 spirit stones in my possession. And it's not because I keep the rest somewhere else. I'm simply broke. Tianyang said in a somewhat prideful manner, leaving Huang Shaoli speechless. How is it even possible to have so little when you are a spirit lord? You also do a lot of risky sect missions. That alone should have given you a decent amount of money. I use them immediately to boost my cultivation. That way, if someone tries to rob me, I won't have much to give them and therefore won't feel bad about it. That is such a weird way of thinking. You won't think like that once you get robbed. Tianyang shrugged. So you've been robbed before? Plenty of times. Is that really something to be proud of? Of course. Most robberies end up as murder, so it's impressive to remain alive after being robbed many times. Anyways, let's head to the teleportation array, said Tianyang. Okay, but where will we go? Let's head to the western stronghold first, then we can go to the northern stronghold and eastern stronghold. Well, save the central stronghold for last. Tianyang didn't want to say it out loud, but the chances of the Huang family surviving the other cities were near zero. If her family had been teleported to anywhere that isn't near the southern stronghold, they would most likely perish to magical beasts before reaching the city, he sighed inwardly. He harbored the assumption that Huang Xiaoli's family might no longer be in this world, a weighty realization that he chose to keep to himself. Nonetheless, he remained committed to assisting her in the search. They arrived at the teleportation array sometime later. It will cost 5,000 spirit stones for one of you to reach the western stronghold, said the array master managing the teleportation array. F5,000. Tianyang broke into a cold sweat after hearing such a large figure. He could cultivate for decades with 5,000 spirit stones. I understand. Erase 10,000. Huang Xiaoli handed over the money without hesitation. Her actions caught the attention of several people there. In these people's eyes, Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli were young and fat sheep that could easily be exploited. Yuan felt their gazes but decided to remain silent. After entering the teleportation array, they were instantly teleported to the western stronghold. Let's go. Tianyang suddenly grabbed Huang Xiaoli's hand the moment they exited the teleportation array and started running away, dragging her along. What happened? Startled by his actions, Huang Xiaoli asked in a puzzled tone. Because you carelessly took out so much money, we've attracted some bad people. He briefly explained. What? That's ridiculous. Sure enough, shortly after they left the teleportation formation, another group of people that also came from the southern stronghold appeared in the western stronghold. I found them. They are running away over there. One of these individuals pointed at Tianyang while alerting the rest of the group. After them. The group consisted of 4 individuals, and to follow Tianyang using the teleportation array, they had to expend 20,000 spirit stones. Naturally, they assumed that Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli possessed sufficient resources to not only cover their own expenses but also yield additional gains, prompting their decision to pursue the duo. C1359 Targeted. Chapter 1359 Targeted. 1359 Targeted. The pursuers are between the first-level Spirit Lord and the third-level Spirit Lord. We won't be able to win in a direct confrontation. Tianyang thought to himself after sensing their cultivation. Fortunately for him, pursuing someone in the city proved challenging due to the irregular placement of buildings. Additionally, Tianyang, accustomed to being pursued, had acquired the skill of misdirection to evade those chasing him. Sometime later, Tianyang managed to shake off his pursuers by hiding in an isolated alley. We should be safe now. I'm sorry. I was too careless. Huang Xiaoli sighed. No, as the one in charge, I am also responsible. Anyways, those guys all had the same tattoo on their body. Due to the desolate continent's lawless nature, fugitives and bandits started forming gangs to protect each other and bully the others. If I recall correctly, those guys belong to a gang called the Gold and Money Bandits. They are known for ganging up on the weak. Although their members do not have high cultivation, they are the largest gang in the desolate continent. What should we do now? She asked. Unfortunately, we won't be able to search for your parents in the open now, as they will actively look for us. Huang Xiaoli bit her lower lip in frustration after hearing this. 17:08 However, Tianyang continued, but if we disguise ourselves with an appearance-reforming pill and change our clothes, we should be fine. Where would we get such a pill? I don't have any on me. Tianyang proceeded to retrieve 2 appearance-reforming pill and handed one to her. I have some. You're really full of surprises. She muttered. Wait, why didn't you give me this before? I could have used this instead. Do you have any idea how expensive these pills are? They are nearly 50 spirit stones each. If you can disguise yourself without needing it, I'd only be wasting money. He said. Huang Xiaoli was speechless. Also, these pills only work for about 12 hours and I only have enough for the next 3 days. If we can't buy more by then, we'll have to stop looking for your parents. Tianyang warned. We just need to buy more, right? They'll buy as much as we need. She declared in a determined voice. That is if we can find more. With that being said, there should be an abundance of these pills in this sort of place due to its nature. They swallowed the pill a moment later, changing their appearance entirely. What about our clothes? Huang Xiaoli asked. I have plain clothes but I only have 1 set. You can have it. Tianyang handed her a set of plain white robes. What about you? He'll settle with this for now. He retrieved a black cloak enveloping his entire body in its folds. Once they were prepared, they left the alley and resumed their search for the Huang family. After a day of normality, Tianyang suddenly noticed people staring at them from a distance. We need to leave right now. Tianyang said to Huang Shaoli through divine sense. He grabbed her hand and immediately began running away. Sometime later, once they were in the clear, he explained, "They've found us." What? Oh. Tianyang pondered for a moment before responding, "They probably investigated about us. Since we've been asking about your family for several days at the southern stronghold, they can easily spot us if we continue doing the same thing, regardless of our disguise. Omicron, so we can no longer look for my family without being hunted?" she muttered in a low voice. Tianyang didn't know how to respond and remained silent. Even if they traveled to another city, the gold and money bandits had eyes in all 5 cities, so unless they got rid of the gang, their search was essentially over. What? Why is nothing going right? I'm just trying to find my family. Why is the heavens doing this to us? What did we do wrong? Huang Shaoli suddenly released her frustration, tears streaming down her face. Sometime later, Tianyang said, "Although we can't ask around about your family, we can still look around ourselves." In response to his words, Huang Shaoli sighed with a heaviness that echoed through her words, "There's no point. It's evident that the heavens are playing with us. Despite my attempts to cling to hope, deep within, I knew that my family never made it out alive, that I was only denying reality to delay the inevitable." "Then how do you explain our escape? Why were we the only ones who survived when we were all being targeted by that sea demon?" Tianyang asked. "I don't know, and I don't care anymore. I'm tired. I want all of this to end already." Huang Shaoli lowered her head, her eyes devoid of any light, almost as if her soul had died. Tianyang knew that there was nothing he could say that would make her feel better, so he silently sat beside her and patiently waited for her to recover. "If I leave now, I will probably live the rest of my life thinking about it. That would be disastrous for my Dao heart," he sighed inwardly. Thus, for the next hour, they would sit in a narrow and isolated alley without uttering a single word to each other. Eventually, Huang Shaoli broke the silence and asked, "Why are you doing so much for me? I don't deserve it." Tianyang could tell that Huang Shaoli was deliberately saying such things even though she promised not to bring it up again so that he could leave her behind. "Just leave me behind." Huang Shaoli sighed inwardly. She lacked the courage to directly ask him to leave, so this was the only way for her to express herself. However, in response, Tianyang suddenly wrapped his arm around her and mumbled in a low voice, "I promised your father that I'd protect you, and I am not one to break promises." Huang Shaoli lifted her head and looked at him after hearing his words. "My father?" she muttered in a dazed voice. C1360 Huang Shaoli's Feelings? Chapter 1360 Huang Shaoli's Feelings 1360 Huang Shaoli's Feelings? "When did you promise my father such a thing?" Huang Shaoli asked him. After a brief moment of silence, he revealed, "When we were being attacked by the sea demon, he communicated with me through divine sense. If you manage to get out of this alive and we don't, please protect my daughter." These were his exact words right before we got separated. Huang Shaoli began bawling her eyes out after hearing this. "Father. Mother. Brother." She screamed into her sleeves, releasing all of her built-up anguish. Huang Shaoli cried and cried, soaking her whole sleeve with tears. Eventually, after many minutes of release, Huang Shaoli calmed down. "Thank you, Tianyang. I will stop being so weak. That will be the last time I shed tears," she declared with a determined look on her face. Tianyang smiled. "It's okay to have a moment of weakness now and then. That's what makes us human. What do you want to do next?" he then asked. "I'm going to stop searching for my family and start focusing on improving my cultivation. I want to be strong enough to wipe away the gold and money bandits by myself," she said. She then looked at him and asked, "Do you mind if I follow you to train? I know my cultivation is lacking right now, but I will try my best to not get in your way and catch up." He smiled and said, "How am I going to protect you if you're not by my side?" Huang Shaoli found his smile to be exceptionally handsome for some reason, and she immediately began blushing. "Let's get some rest before we begin our training," he suggested. "Okay." They proceeded to change their disguise with an appearance-reforming pill before looking for a hotel to stay at. Once they found a hotel, Huang Shaoli asked for the largest room that had a bathtub. "It will cost 50 spirit stones per night. Checkout will be at noon," the manager said. Huang Shaoli paid for 7 days in advance. "An entire week? That might be a little too much," Tianyang said as they entered their room, which was decently better than their stay at the previous hotel. "I want to make sure that we're fully rested before we begin our training," she said. "If you say so, not that I am complaining." He didn't have the right to complain since he was essentially leeching off Huang Xiaoli's money. After removing their disguises, Huang Xiaoli entered the bathroom to wash herself first, followed by Tianyang. When Tianyang came out of the bathroom, Huang Xiaoli was sitting by the bed with a pondering expression on her face. "What's on your mind?" he asked. Huang Xiaoli turned towards him and with a silent grace she rose from the bed, enveloping him in a sudden embrace. "What are you doing?" Tianyang asked in a startled voice. Instead of answering she asked, "You don't like it?" Hearing no response from Tianyang, Huang Xiaoli released him just enough to where they could see each other's faces, revealing her flushed face. In the ensuing moment she closed her eyes and advanced towards him, her lips subtly pressed forward, her intentions as unmistakable as daylight. Though taken by surprise, Tianyang did not reject Huang Xiaoli's kiss and accepted it. Once the kiss ended, the two of them silently stared at each other, unsure of how they should advance. Eventually Tianyang made the first move and led her to the bed. He proceeded to remove her clothes, to which Huang Xiaoli did not object. A few moments later, Huang Xiaoli's beautiful and slender body lay exposed on the bed, a sight for Tianyang's eyes to feast upon. He gently caressed her smooth skin with his fingers, eliciting sensations that caused her to tremble. Sometime later, when Tianyang removed his clothes, Huang Xiaoli spoke in a bashful voice, "This is my first time. The same goes for me." Tianyang admitted that he had no prior experience, just like her. Soon the room became filled with Huang Xiaoli's voice, resonating with pleasure. Their session would last for many hours until Huang Xiaoli fell asleep from exhaustion. When they woke up the following day they would repeat it with increased intensity. Over the next few days Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli would make love, sleep, wake up and repeat, almost as if they didn't know how to do anything else. Very few words were shared between them during these sessions, but their actions and responses to said actions were more than enough for them to understand each other. On the sixth day, the day before their time at the hotel was up, they cleaned themselves and spent the rest of their time cultivating and recovering their stamina. They left the hotel on the morning of the seventh day and used the teleportation array to return to the southern stronghold, where they would spend the next few weeks training. Finally they are gone. The manager sighed in relief after seeing Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli leave his hotel. Since the walls were thin, all the sound they made during their fun session was overheard by the manager. However, in the manager's view both Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli were men, so one could imagine what was going through his mind when he heard such noises. Fortunately for him, the noises ceased completely on the third day. It was also on that day that Tianyang discovered Huang Xiaoli was also an array master, albeit only at level 1, when she created a sound barrier in their room. After they left the hotel, Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli left the city to hunt magical beasts. However, since Huang Xiaoli's cultivation was too weak for her to fight beside him, she would support him from a safe distance and set up traps using arrays whenever she could. They continued this for the next several weeks. C1361 Training Together. Chapter 1361 Training Together 1361 Training Together. Look. This monster has a core. Huang Xiaoli announced in an excited tone as she dug out a monster core from the magical beast they just slew. This is our second one today. How lucky. Tianyang smiled. They've been hunting magical beasts non-stop for the past month. After killing a magical beast, they would sell its valuable parts to the merchants for money and keep the cores to boost their own cultivation. As for the money they earned through selling magical beast parts, they would use it to purchase appearance-reforming pills and medicine. Any leftovers would be used to further boost their cultivation. They would stop hunting at the end of every week to spend a day in a hotel in order to clean themselves among other things at night. During this month-long period, Tianyang increased his cultivation to the 3rd level Spirit Lord. Huang Xiaoli saw the biggest improvements, reaching the peak of Spirit Grandmaster. When Tianyang saw how fast Huang Xiaoli was advancing, it reminded him of his own lack of talent. Despite most of the resources going towards him, Huang Xiaoli was still advancing faster than he did at her level. It's been a little over 2 months since they started their journey to the Desolate Continent, and they have spent about a month and a half on the Desolate Continent itself. How long do you plan on staying in this place? Huang Xiaoli asked him as they lay on the bed at the end of their love session. I applied for 3 months of leave, and I intended to spend at least a month training here, he said. In that case, you are already late since it will take us at least another month to return to the sect. I know. You're not worried about punishment? I heard they could be quite severe, she said in a worried tone. This won't be my first time staying outside the sect longer than I am supposed to, and I have a friend at the sect to rely on during such times. What about you? You're a fellow disciple too. I requested 4 months of leave so I still have some time, she said. Even if I return to the sect late, my situation should give me some leeway. Despite mentioning her family's situation, Huang Shaoli only sounded a little melancholic, a testament to how much she had grown since then. There is a ship sailing to and from the desolate continent at the beginning of every month, so we can leave in 2 weeks. Tianyang said. What will you do once you return? Do you have any other family members at home? He suddenly asked. I'm not sure, but I still have my grandparents, she said. How about your family? I'm the only one left, he calmly said. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't be. In fact, I don't know anything about my real parents. According to the village I grew up in, I was abandoned there shortly after birth. I was adopted by a single mother who was living alone with her daughter, who became my sister. They were killed before I turned 10, and I have been living alone since then. That's? Huang Shaoli was shocked by his background, which she was learning about for the first time. Their conversation ended shortly after, and they fell asleep a little later. They continued their training the following day. In the blink of an eye, another 10 days passed. Let's start making our way to the docks, said Tianyang after they cleaned their bodies at the hotel. All right. The docks were located about 100 miles away from the southern stronghold, so it didn't take too long for them to reach their destination. At the docks, a massive ship was stationed with some people already boarding it. That must be the swimming dragon, Huang Shaoli said after seeing the dragon's head at the front of the ship. There were 3 different ships that traveled to and from the desolate continent. The Raging Serpent, the Wandering Koi, and the Swimming Dragon. However, with the Raging Serpent destroyed by the Flying Leviathan, there were only 2 working ships now. Let's get our room, Tianyang said as he approached the dock. Huang Shaoli happily followed along. However, just as they took a couple of steps, the ground suddenly shook violently, reminiscent of the event that occurred nearly 3 months ago with the Sea Demon. What's happening? Just as Huang Shaoli spoke, a black wall suddenly erupted from the edge of the land, enveloping the entire desolate continent like some kind of dome. This black dome covered the entire sky, blocking everything except sunlight. In the wake of the black dome's emergence, an authoritative voice echoed across the desolate continent. The desolate continent has just been sealed. No entry or exit shall be permitted until the entity known as Colossal is exterminated. Shortly after this announcement, the world started to tremble again as multiple waves of intense spiritual energy swept the desolate continent, almost as though there were multiple immortal experts fighting on the land. What the hell is happening? Who was that speaking? Panicked screaming could be heard coming from the ship in the distance. In fact, everyone on the continent was demanding for answers, but the voice did not return, leaving them to speculate. I don't know what is happening exactly, but it's obvious that someone is trying to hunt the Colossal, Tianyang said to Huang Shaoli. But what does that have to do with us? They can't keep everyone in here because of that. Tianyang looked at the dome in the sky and sighed. When you are powerful enough, you can do anything you want. After all, who will stop you? Anyways, let's get to the ship first. Maybe they can still leave, Tianyang suggested a moment later. Okay. They quickly approached the ship, ignoring the powerful waves of spiritual energy that were constantly sweeping across the continent. C1362 Unable to Enter or Leave. Chapter 1362 Unable to Enter or Leave. 1362 Unable to Enter or Leave. By the time Tianyang and Huang Shaoli arrived at the ship, the swimming dragon was already released from the docks and sailing towards the black wall a few miles away. Should we just ride the ship? Huang Shaoli asked Tianyang, who could simply fly them to the ship. We'll get closer to the ship, but we won't board it just yet, he said, worried that something might happen once the ship reaches the wall. Okay. Tianyang carried her into the sky and chased after the ship. A few moments later, the ship reached the wall, and Tianyang watched as the swimming dragon crashed into the wall. Bang! The instant the front of the ship made contact with the black wall, an unfathomable force emanated from it, repelling the vessel. The swimming dragon soared out of the sea, hurtling dozens of miles into the continent before crashing into the ground. Tianyang and Huang Shaoli's eyes were wide open after witnessing such a scene. I'm glad we didn't get on that ship, Huang Shaoli mumbled in a dazed voice. Yeah. Tianyang nodded in agreement. What should we do now? She asked a moment later. There's nothing we can do but wait it out. The barrier should disappear once these experts slay the Colossal and accomplish their goal. Hopefully it won't take too long. She sighed. After returning to land, Tianyang and Huang Shaoli sat on the ground and patiently waited for the dome to disappear. However, waves of spiritual energy continued to appear even days later, and the black dome still enveloped the continent. This is getting ridiculous. How can they fight for days without rest? Huang Shaoli sighed out loud. These experts have unfathomable prowess. I cannot even tell what their cultivation level is. Tianyang shook his head. Just to fight the Colossal requires one to be a divine king, so they are at least above that level. Divine king? They are truly in existence unfathomable to us who are still in the spirit realm. Sometime later, Tianyang suggested, since it looks like this will take a while, let's return to the city. Okay. When they arrived at the southern stronghold, Tianyang was surprised to see how many people were in the city. I've never seen this place so crowded before. They can't even walk around without constantly rubbing shoulders. Huang Shaoli was shocked by the scene. Not only was the city brimming with people, but there were also hundreds of individuals camping around the city on the outside. Should we also set up a tent outside? Huang Shaoli asked. I doubt we'll be able to find a room in the hotel anyway. He nodded. They quickly found an empty spot to set up their tent, something they'd purchased during the earlier days of their training. As they prepared their tent, Tianyang could hear the others around them talking to each other. I'm telling you, there are over 100 Divine Realm cultivators fighting the Colossal. I saw it with my own eyes. What were their cultivation levels? I can only sense up to Divine Emperor, and out of the 100 or so experts fighting, I could only sense 3 Divine Emperors, so everyone else must be higher than Divine Emperor. Heavens! This must be an all-out war with the Colossal. Why are they even targeting the Colossal? It doesn't even attack anyone unless provoked. It might be due to a certain rumor. What rumor? According to the rumor, there exists an Immortal's graveyard somewhere within the desolate continent. This Immortal was a golden Immortal when he was still alive, so he must have left behind some insanely powerful treasure. Some even speculate that the Colossal has something to do with that Immortal, that it might be the key to finding the Immortal's graveyard. There's no way. How many cultivators have reached the realm of golden Immortal since the beginning of time? Less than 5. If this rumor is true, it would be a historical discovery. Golden Immortal. Tianyang muttered after hearing this information. During this period of time, Golden Immortal was the highest level of cultivation known to man, so it was literally the peak of cultivation. Do you think the rumors are true? Huang Shaoli asked out of curiosity. If it was true, it would make sense why these experts are so desperate to defeat the Colossal. Or they think that the Colossal might have some amazing treasure within its possession, he quickly added. Honestly, that would make more sense. Huang Shaoli agreed. A week later, Tianyang peeked at the sky from inside the tent after his cultivation session ended. It's been 2 weeks now. Just how long does it take for 100 Divine Realm experts to defeat a single opponent? He sighed out loud. Suddenly, someone could be heard shouting in a panicked manner, "Run! Run away! The fight with the Colossal is approaching our direction." What? Shaoli, wake up. We have to leave right now. Tianyang shook her awake. What happened? The Colossal is coming here. What? As they exited the tent, a dark figure emerged on the farthest reaches of the horizon. Its size swiftly expanded, indicating its imminent approach. Huang Shaoli still recalled her first encounter with the Colossal as though it happened yesterday, and her body trembled upon seeing it again. As they tore down their tent, Huang Shaoli asked, "Which way should we go?" The Colossal appeared from the west, so we can only go east. What about the teleportation array? We can use that. However, someone else responded to her, the teleportation arrays have stopped working ever since the barrier appeared. We can only move on foot. That's crazy. Once they packed their stuff, Tianyang and Huang Shaoli began running towards the eastern stronghold with hundreds of others moving in the same direction, resembling that of a village migration. C1363 stuck in a loop. Chapter 1363 Stuck in a Loop. 1363 Stuck in a loop. During their journey to the eastern stronghold, they encountered many magical beasts in their path. However, since many people were traveling together, it made things somewhat manageable. With that being said, there were still many casualties. The journey from the southern stronghold to the eastern stronghold took a little over a month with barely any time to rest. We should be safe for a while now. Tianyang sighed after setting up their tent again. Hearing no response, he looked at Huang Shaoli, who was silently gazing at the barrier in the sky. How much longer do we have to keep running? This isn't that much different from our encounter with the flying Leviathan. She mumbled in a dazed voice. Are we caught in some kind of loop where we are constantly running away from entities that we cannot even imagine fighting? Unfortunately, this is simply how life for weaklings like us works. Is there truly nothing we can do? She sighed. We can only continue to improve ourselves until the day that we no longer have to run arrives. We will probably be long dead before that happens. While that is very likely, we won't know until we reach that point. Huang Shaoli asked with a slight smile on her face. How are you able to remain calm and positive all the time? What is your secret? He shook his head. There is no secret. I just find it pointless trying to worry about such things. The fact you can do that is impressive enough, but that's also what I love about you. Time continued to pass. 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It has been 5 months since the desolate continent became isolated from the rest of the world, and news of its situation had already spread throughout the divine heavens. Damn it. That reckless idiot hasn't returned to the sect for half a year, but his life jade slip is still working, so he's obviously not dead. That idiot must have gone to the desolate continent. Elder Sun kicked her table in frustration. If you are that worried about him, why don't you go there and save him? Someone suggested. That isn't possible as long as that barrier is around the desolated continent. In the first place, this isn't a situation that can be handled by a single individual. If you complain to your family, don't bring them up. I left them for a reason and I won't go back no matter what. Whatever you say. Despite her words, Elder Sun was already contemplating asking her family for help. Meanwhile, Tianyang and Huang Shaoli traversed nearly the entire desolate continent during the past 5 months, moving from city to city whenever the colossal got close. Tianyang's cultivation continued to progress and eventually reached 5th level Spirit Lord, while Huang Shaoli surpassed Spirit Grandmaster and entered the realm of Spirit Lord, quickly catching up to Tianyang. After spending so much time sealed within the desolate continent, they have long stopped wondering when the barrier will be removed and focused on improving their new lifestyle and increasing their chances of survival. Our supply of appearance-reforming pills will be running out very soon. Huang Shaoli warned Tianyang. Not only did they have to run from the colossal, they also had to avoid the gold and money bandits. Even with their current situation, the lawless nature refused to stop. In fact, it even got worse. They tried to travel without their disguises a month into their confinement, but they were immediately recognized by the bandits, forcing them to continue relying on disguises. They started using the appearance-reforming pills sparingly and purchased any they could find, but that wasn't enough to keep them from running out of supply. Even my makeup has run out. She sighed. We are already traveling separately from the group, so there's really nothing else we can do. Tianyang shook his head. Why are these damn bandits so persistent anyway? Huang Shaoli stomped the ground in anger. Omicronim. Considering how nobody can enter the land and people are lying left and right, they are probably running out of people to bully. Tianyang said. Also, the fact that we've killed several of their members most likely has something to do with it. That's called self-defense. Murder is still murder. I swear that if we get out of here alive, I will come back in the future to eradicate every last one of them. Huang Shaoli bellowed. I'd love to see how you plan on doing that. A foreign voice suddenly responded to her threat. Who's there? Tianyang and Huang Shaoli immediately went into a combative stance. In response, over 20 people emerged from the shadow, surrounding them. How did I not notice this many people around us? That's impossible. Tianyang was shocked. Are you bastards from Gold and Money Bandits? Huang Shaoli glared at them with killing intent. We're not just from the Gold and Money Bandits, we are the gang. The voice resounded, and it came from a middle-aged man, who was emitting the prowess of a spirit king. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I am the leader is what it means. The man laughed. Tianyang gritted his teeth as he tried to find a way out of their predicament. However, their opponents had a spirit king on their side who could easily kill both of them by himself. There was simply no way to escape. How did you find us? Tianyang asked. It wasn't difficult. In fact, we could have located you whenever we wanted during these last few months. The only reason we didn't was simply because there were bigger fishes out there to hunt. What do you want from us? Tianyang asked. A cold grin appeared on the leader's face as he spoke. Just one thing, your life. After a pause, he corrected himself. Actually, that would be 2 things since there are 2 of you. C1364 Deceiving Himself? Chapter 1364 Deceiving Himself 1364 Deceiving Himself Xiao, listen to me. While I try to block them, you need to run away as fast as possible. Tianyang said to Huang Xiao through divine sense. What? No way. I will not leave you here to die alone. If you're going to stay here and fight, so will I. She immediately rejected his plan. Damn it. This isn't the time to be stubborn. I promised to protect you, so just listen to me and let me protect you. Despite telling her to run away, Tianyang knew there was essentially no chance he could block them long enough for her to escape, and he was only trying to deceive himself. Do you seriously think you can escape in this situation? The leader suddenly laughed out loud, almost as if he could hear their conversation. Why do you want to kill us? We've never done anything to offend you. Huang Xiao shouted. But you killed several of my men though? That's self-defense. Then you can consider this as self-defense too. The leader laughed maniacally. Tianyang closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Xiao, I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing to me? Because I have failed to keep my promise. I'm sorry that I couldn't protect you. Nonsense. We can survive this. Just as Wed survived until now. Tianyang didn't respond. Talking between yourselves again? Go ahead. I'll let you say your goodbyes since I am a good person. The leader said. In the following moment, Tianyang suddenly moved. However, he didn't move to attack the bandits. He appeared right beside Huang Xiao and grabbed her hand. I love you, he muttered to her in a low and gentle voice. I love. The moment Huang Xiao opened her mouth to respond, Tianyang, using all his strength, tossed her into the air and away from the bandits. Run! He shouted at her. The leader sneered at his pointless attempt and spoke in a commanding tone, half of you go hunt that escaped rat. Seeing this, Tianyang tried his best to block them. However, he wasn't able to block a single one from chasing after Huang Xiao. What can a powerless man like you do? The leader of the gang blocked Tianyang from his attempt. Get out of my way. Tianyang unleashed all of his cultivation and attacked the leader. Why struggle when you know it'll be in vain? The leader casually deflected his attack. The difference between Spirit Lord and Spirit King was like heaven and earth. There was simply no chance for a talentless person like Tianyang to overcome such a hurdle. However, the leader didn't immediately kill Tianyang and toyed with him by giving him minor injuries, almost as if the leader wanted his opponent to bleed to death. Many minutes of struggling later, the other bandits returned, and in their grasp was Huang Xiao's lifeless body. Tianyang lost his strength when he saw her corpse. Oh, took you guys long enough. The leader said to them. The bandit carrying her corpse tossed her body onto the ground like trash and said, the bastard was stronger than expected and even managed to kill 2 of us. Omicron the leader raised an eyebrow when he saw Huang Xiao's appearance. Who is this woman? She was a woman disguised as a man. We didn't realize it until we killed her. The bandit sighed. Truly a pity. We could have had so much fun with a beauty like her. The leader shook his head. He continued, whatever, I'm sure some of the guys back at the base are into this kind of stuff. Keep her corpse for now. Roger. Tianyang remained frozen, almost as though he had turned into stone, his eyes void of light. Hey, are you still alive? The leader suddenly pierced his sword into Tianyang's stomach. Seeing not even the slightest reaction from Tianyang, the leader sighed, how boring. He raised his arm in preparation to behead Tianyang. Right as the leader pulled his sword back, one of the bandits suddenly screamed in a terrified voice, Leader! Behind you! The leader turned around to see a massive ball of flames flying towards them. What the foo? Boom! The ball of flames landed near them, exploding viciously. The leader and half of the bandits there instantly turned to charcoal from the flames while everyone else was blown away by the explosion, including Tianyang, who barely managed to escape the flames because the leader had stood in front of him and blocked most of it. Unbeknownst to them, the ball of flames had been launched by one of the experts fighting the Colossal. Upon missing its target, the ball of flame disappeared into the horizon and happened to land by Tianyang. Fuck. The leader's dead. Run before another attack comes. The surviving bandits scrambled away, ignoring Tianyang, who looked as good as dead anyway. Several days later, someone approached Tianyang's corpse-like body cautiously. Wow, how is this bastard still alive with such injuries? A young man's voice exclaimed in a surprised tone. After a moment of silence, the young man spoke again. Your determination to live must be quite impressive. I cannot allow such a warrior to die like this. The young man proceeded to retrieve a vial of an unknown substance and poured it into Tianyang's mouth. Within moments, the injuries on Tianyang's body started recovering at a rapid rate. A few minutes later, Tianyang slowly opened his eyes. When he sensed something next to him, Tianyang subconsciously attacked. "Get your dirty hands off her, you bastards!" Tianyang roared. Oh. The young man swiftly evaded his attack and distanced from Tianyang. "Calm down, buddy. I'm not here to hurt you." After coming to his senses, Tianyang looked around frantically. "Where are the bandits? Where's Xiao? I haven't seen any bandits, nor do I know who this Xiao is." The young man shrugged. "Who are you?" Tianyang asked the young man with gold-colored hair. "Where are your manners? You should introduce yourself first before asking for another's identity." "Whatever, I am in a good mood so I will look past it." "I'm Kulas, what about you?" The young man introduced himself. C1365 Immortal Ensnaring Vault. Chapter 1365 Immortal Ensnaring Vault. 1365 Immortal Ensnaring Vault. "Tianyang, huh? Why were you on the brink of death, Tianyang?" Kulas asked him. After hearing this question, he recalled everything that had happened to him before he was knocked unconscious, followed by a tsunami of emotion that consumed him with anguish. Xiao. He ignored Kulas and ran to the crater created by the ball of flames. However, there was no sign of Huang Xiao. The ball of flames that appeared out of thin air had erased all signs of the bandits along with Huang Xiaoli's corpse. Tianyang fell to his knees and started bawling his eyes out. "Xiao, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Ah. Tianyang released a deafening howl that carried immense anguish and anger. Kulas watched this scene unfold before him with a serious expression on his face. Even though he didn't know the situation, even a blind man could tell that something tragic had occurred to Tianyang. Remained in the kneeling position for many hours on end without moving a single muscle. Eventually, Kulas approached him from behind and spoke in a gentle voice. "I don't know what happened, but you clearly have unfinished business. Are you going to sit there until you die from anguish, or are you going to do something about it?" Tianyang was unresponsive. Kulas continued trying. "This Xiao, was she your lover or something?" Tianyang's body had a slight reaction when he heard her name. Seeing this, Kulas continued, "Judging by the scene, it's been several days since whatever happened here ended. You've managed to survive so many days with injuries that would have killed someone else over 100 times. Your determination is unfathomable. I know you are not someone to give up no matter how bad things get." "My injuries. Did you heal them for me?" Tianyang suddenly asked. "That's right. I had a feeling that you weren't meant to die here, so I fed you some medicine." "Kulas, correct?" "That's right." "Thank you, Kulas." Tianyang wiped his face and slowly stood up. He lifted his head and stared at heaven with a profound expression on his face. "The barrier, it's gone?" At that moment, Tianyang realized the barrier that had ensnared the desolate continent had vanished. The immortal ensnaring vault? It was lifted 3 days ago. Kulas revealed. "Huh?" Tianyang looked at him with wide eyes. "Why do you know?" After a brief pause, his face twisted with anger. "Don't tell me you are responsible for that barrier?" "What?" Kulas reacted to his accusation with shock. "That's quite the accusation. Do I look like someone who could deploy such a priceless treasure? That was something done by the immortal clans." "Immortal clans? What are you talking about?" Tianyang frowned. "You really don't know anything, huh? Well, I don't blame you." Kulas shrugged. Omicron, he continued, "The barrier that sealed this place for half a year is called the Immortal Ensnaring Vault, a treasure owned by one of the 9 immortal clans. It was activated to prevent the key from escaping when the immortal clans worked together to subjugate it." "Are you talking about the Colossal?" "Yes, the Colossal was a key to open the Immortals' graveyard sealed within this land. If the immortal clans hadn't sealed this place, the key would have escaped. Anyways, the immortal clans succeeded in eliminating the key and revealed the entrance to the Immortals' graveyard. Now everyone around the divine heavens is rushing to this place to enter the Immortals' graveyard." Tianyang gritted his teeth after learning this information. Because of these immortal clan bastards, Xiao had to suffer and die an undeserving death. He clenched his fists so hard that it began to bleed. "Why you should keep such words to yourself? If anyone from the immortal clans were to hear you, they would have skinned you alive." Kulas nervously said as he looked around to ensure they were alone. 9 immortal clans. "I swear I will make you pay for this." Tianyang's eyes flickered with a vicious light. "Hey, what do you think about visiting the Immortals' graveyard with me?" Kulas suddenly said. "I decline." Tianyang frowned, his reluctance etched across his face. Why not? Why should I? He immediately rebuked. Well, for one, you can acquire all kinds of powerful treasures if you're lucky, and if you're fated, you might even acquire the Immortal's legacy. If you had that, standing at the peak of the world wouldn't be a fantasy. As for the second reason, you kind of owe me for saving your life, you know? Kulas chuckled. Tianyang fell silent and began pondering. Why me? No special reason. I just think we were brought together by fate and I admire your tenacity. If I had a guy like you around, my chances of survival would surely increase. What kind of bullshit reasoning is that? Tianyang snickered. But it is true that I owe him for saving my life. He sighed inwardly. Think about it. There's a reason that even geniuses from top sects are scurrying to come here. He's right. This could be an opportunity for me to finally achieve my dreams. Of course, I'm not forcing you to come with me. I'm just asking as a friend. Since when did we become friends? I'm not sure. A few moments ago, I suppose? Kulas laughed heartily. Tianyang rubbed his eyes and sighed. All right, I will accompany you to the Immortal's graveyard. Kulas' eyes immediately brightened. Hell yeah. That's what I am talking about. The entrance will be opened in 2 days' time, so we should just barely make it to witness the opening if we move out now. Follow me. Right as Tianyang prepared to follow Kulas, he noticed a subtle glint in the corner of his eyes. That's... Tianyang immediately went to pick up the object shining on the ground. Xiao Li. He muttered in a low voice as he recognized the object as Huang Xiao Li's spatial ring. What are you waiting for? Let's go. Kulas called for him from a distance. Tianyang tightly held the ring and pressed it against his heart before muttering in a resolute voice, I swear, I will seek justice for you even if it's the last thing I do. C1366 Definition of Talent. Chapter 1366 Definition of Talent. 1366 Definition of Talent. After putting away Huang Xiao Li's storage ring, Tianyang went after Kulas, who was waiting for him in the distance. What did you find on the ground? Kulas asked him with a curious gaze. A purpose, he responded in a cold voice. Seeing his serious expression, Kulas didn't question further. Instead, Tianyang inquired more information about the Immortal's graveyard. Tell me more about this Immortal's graveyard. Kulas nodded and shared his knowledge. The Immortal's graveyard's official name is Han Zexian's tomb. Han Zexian was one of the top golden immortals, but he vanished about 30,000 years ago. The 9 immortal clans eventually learned that he was last seen in this desolate continent and spent the last 1,000 years looking for him. In the end, all they found was the entrance to a sealed tomb. On the door to the tomb was a clue which hinted at the Colossal. After eliminating the Colossal, the seal to the tomb was released. Tianyang took a moment to digest this information before asking, the 9 immortal clans must have expended an immense amount of resources to deal with the Colossal since it took them half a year of constant fighting to defeat it. Are they really allowing everyone to enter it? Sounds a little suspicious. Even the 9 immortal clans wouldn't dare to be so selfish. If this was just any ordinary tomb, then they would have been able to do so, but Han Zexian was no ordinary cultivator. He was the first cultivator to ever reach Golden Immortal, and he helped the cultivation scene advance tremendously. He was a public figure who shared his experience and knowledge with as many people as he could. If the 9 immortal clans were to dare take his tomb for themselves, you can imagine how the world would react. Han Zexian. Tianyang mumbled. He's heard of this name several times during lectures at the sect, but he never really cared too much about it. Though there is one caveat for making the tomb public. The 9 immortal clans get to send in their people first, and nobody can enter for the first 7 days. After the 7-day period ends, it will be a free-for-all. But the tomb will open in 2 days, so there are still 9 days before we can enter? Indeed. I came here early to witness the opening of the tomb. Kulas nodded. A few minutes later, they encountered a magical beast in the Spirit Emperor realm. Don't worry, I got this. Kulas suddenly charged at the magical beast without any hesitation. Wielding 2 gauntlets on his fists, he released a powerful punch, striking the magical beast directly between its eyes and killing it in a single strike. He's a Spirit Emperor at such an age. He must be a genius from a renowned sect. Tianyang was greatly surprised. It was no wonder he couldn't sense Kulas' cultivation. As long as we don't encounter any spirit sovereigns or above, he'll get rid of them, Kulas said as he removed his gauntlets. How old are you? Tianyang asked out of curiosity. "I'm 20 years old," he calmly said. Tianyang was speechless. Kulas was half his age but had already become a spirit emperor. The difference in their talent was so vast that he didn't even want to think about it. At 20 years old, Tianyang was still a mere spirit apprentice. While he most likely started cultivation much later than Kulas, it wouldn't have made a difference. Even if Tianyang started at the moment of his birth, he wouldn't have been a spirit emperor by now. Kulas saw the look of defeat on Tianyang's face and smiled. "Talent isn't everything in this world." Tianyang looked at him and sneered, "That's easy to say for someone as talented as you." Kulas shook his head and said, "While I may seem talented in your eyes, there are countless geniuses more talented than me. If you ask me what I think is more important than talent, it would be one's fate. No matter how talented one may be, if you were not fated to achieve great things, what use is such talent? Countless geniuses above me have perished before they even got the chance to flourish. What use is fate if you have no talents? You'd still live a life as a powerless ant." Kulas smiled and said, "That's the thing, you don't know what fate has in store for you until it happens. While you may be born without talents, who's to say that you won't acquire talents in the future?" "Acquiring talents? That's nonsense," Tianyang sneered. "I don't know what your definition of talent is, but one's talent is not set in stone. There are countless treasures and mythical techniques out there that can turn someone ordinary into a dragon overnight." Tianyang could not deny Kulas' words. Kulas suddenly continued, "Why do you think places like the Immortal's graveyard exist? So the rich could get richer? So the talented could become even more powerful? While that is certainly possible and happens all the time, I believe their main purpose is to attract the one with the strongest fate. Who knows, you might acquire Han Zexian's legacy and become a dragon." "Yeah, right?" Kulas looked at him with a profound smile and said, "That said, I think you're already quite talented." "Me? Talented? Ah, that's the funniest joke I've heard all decade long. Being able to survive is also a talent. I can tell at a glance that you're someone who has encountered countless life-or-death situations, more than anyone that I know. Despite having less talent than those geniuses I know, you've managed to survive this long. If that isn't a talent, I don't know what is." "You call that talent? If so, I'd rather not have such talents. What's the point if I keep barely managing to survive like a beggar? That's just called a struggle. I guess it won't be easy to change your mind, but I'm sure you'll eventually realize the truth." Kulas laughed heartily. What a weird fellow. Tianyang shook his head inwardly. C1367 Immortal Clans. Chapter 1367 Immortal Clans. 1367 Immortal Clans, "We're here," Kulas declared when they arrived at an empty plot of land that stretched for miles after traveling for almost an entire day. Tianyang calmly analyzed the scene before him. There were hundreds if not thousands of people already gathered there, with 9 distinctive groups of people at the very front, all of them standing before a massive gate laid on the ground. This gate appeared to be made of stone, and it had the word Han engraved on it. Furthermore, it was laid directly on the floor, almost as though it was the doorway to an underground world. "Those people standing in the very front are from the 9 immortal clans," said Kulas. Hearing this, Tianyang immediately memorized the faces of everyone from the 9 immortal clans, as well as their distinctive uniforms. These bastards are responsible for Xiao Li's death. Tianyang subconsciously emitted killing intent through his gaze. When Kulas noticed this, he immediately slapped Tianyang in the back and muttered in a low voice, "Directing killing intent at the immortal clans, are you insane? You're a dead man if they noticed it." "Sorry, that wasn't my intention." Tianyang apologized, kicking himself for failing to control his emotions. "I don't know why you're acting like this, but you need to keep yourself in control, or you're dead before you even step foot inside the tomb." "I know." Tianyang clenched his fists. Unbeknownst to Tianyang, some of the experts from the 9 immortal clans had noticed his killing intent, but when they saw that he was a mere spirit lord, they immediately disregarded him as they saw no threat in him. "Let's get in line," Kulas said to him a moment later. Tianyang and Kulas went to stand behind the others. There was a large gap between the 9 immortal clans and the others. As time passed, more and more people showed up to the scene. However, not everyone went to the back of the line like Tianyang. If these people belonged to influential families or were renowned figures in the divine heavens, they would move to the front, standing directly behind the 9 immortal clans. In some special cases, the 9 immortal clans made exceptions for several individuals, allowing them to enter within the first 7 days. The rule first come first served did not apply here. If one had the strength to back them up, they could easily move to the front of the line. After all, what could the rest of them do besides blame themselves for lacking in strength? A day later, the moment arrived for the tomb to be unveiled, drawing hundreds of thousands of cultivators to witness the historical event. The 9 Immortal Clan's representatives stood before the door on the ground, but before opening it, he declared in a loud voice, "As agreed upon, the 9 Immortal Clans will enter the tomb first. Regardless if you are a sect leader or a rogue cultivator, everyone else must wait 7 full days before they are allowed to enter, or they will immediately be killed. There will be no exceptions." The representative proceeded to open the door by placing an item on it. The doors opened inwardly the next moment, unveiling the entrance to another dimension. Suddenly, before anyone from the 9 Immortal Clans could even move, several dozen figures from the crowd behind them rushed toward the entrance. "Let's see if you can stop all of us at once." However, before these individuals could even get close to the entrance, several experts from the 9 Immortal Clans moved with such swiftness that all of the rebels were slain faster than one could even blink their eyes. These rebels were not weak by any means. Most of them were spirit emperors and above, with a few even at the divine realm. Nonetheless, they were all slain with a single strike. Most of the people there didn't even bat an eyelid after witnessing such a scene, almost as if they were all expecting a few rebels to appear. "Does anyone else want to try?" A calm voice resounded a moment later, carrying the pressure of an immortal. The voice was met with silence. A few moments later, the people from the 9 Immortal Clans jumped into the entrance, disappearing into the ground. Over the next several days, even more people arrived at the site. "There are millions of people here." Tianyang swallowed nervously, as had never seen so many experts gathered in one place before. Suddenly, he sensed a familiar presence appearing above him. When he looked up, he could see a woman staring at him with an enraged expression on her beautiful face. "A senior son?" He immediately recognized her as Elder Sunday. "As I thought, you disappeared to this place." Elder Sun landed in front of him. "What are you doing here, senior? You dare ask me such a question after disappearing for nearly a year? Do you want me to beat you right now?" Elder Sun reprimanded him as she grabbed one of his ears and began pulling on it with immense strength. "Stop. You'll tear it right off." Tianyang cried out loud. "If that'll stop you from doing any more reckless things, he'll tear both of them off." Kulas stared at their performance with an entertained face. "Who's this beautiful fairy?" he asked. "She's a sect elder from my sect," Tianyang said. "And who are you?" Elder Sun looked at Kulas. Kulas," he smiled. "He's my savior," Tianyang added. "Savior?" Elder Sun raised an eyebrow. Kulas shook his head and said, "I didn't do much, honestly. He did most of the surviving. I just happened to come across him and fed him some spare medicine I had." "I'm not surprised. He's even more tenacious than a cockroach," Elder Sun said. She suddenly released Tianyang's ear and gave a courteous bow to Kulas. "Regardless, I thank you for saving him. Please raise your head, senior. I only did what was right." Elder Sun turned to look at Tianyang and demanded in a cold voice, "You better explain to me everything that happened." C1368 Elder Sun. Chapter 1368 Elder Sun. 1368 Elder Sun. I have to explain everything? Unwanted memories flashed within Tianyang's head, causing his expression to darken. "What?" Elder Sun was startled by Tianyang's dark expression, which seemed to be filled with anguish. Although she had seen him being down before, especially when one mentioned about his lack of talents, she had never seen such a defeated look on his face. What did he experience during the past year? She swallowed nervously as she wondered. "What happened to you?" She gathered enough courage to ask him a moment later. However, Tianyang remained silent. Seeing this, Elder Sun turned to look at Kulas for answers, but he merely shrugged while shaking his head in silence. "Whatever. You don't have to tell me now, but whenever you are ready." Tianyang silently nodded, and his expression relaxed a little. "Anyways, our sect will also be participating in this event. They are currently making their way here as we speak. I just happened to arrive first," Elder Sun said, omitting the reason she separated from the sect just to arrive at the desolate continent faster. "The sect," Tianyang mumbled. He then asked, "Do I have to move with the sect inside the tomb?" "Of course not. In the first place, many sect elders and even the sect leader himself will be participating, so it's not an activity meant for disciples. While disciples are allowed to participate if they desire, They won't receive any assistance from the sect, so you're by yourself once inside. Elder Sun said. Is that so? Tianyang wasn't surprised. The tomb of a golden immortal attracted experts more than others. It's not like we can compete with them anyway. Tianyang had already anticipated that the experts would take most of the treasures for themselves while he and the others fought for the leftovers. Kulas suddenly spoke, speaking of inside. None of the people from the 9 immortal clans have returned since they entered the tomb. Normally they would scout the place first before engaging it fully, but not this time. Either they are really tight on time or they've all perished inside. What? There's no way the 9 immortal clans would perish inside a tomb, even if it belongs to a golden immortal. Elder Sun scoffed at that idea. The 9 immortal clans aren't merely powerful, they represent the most powerful families in the divine heavens. If these formidable forces prove unable to survive Han Zexian's tomb, what hope could the others harbor for survival? Would they not be marching willingly into their own graves? Even if you say that, it's almost been 7 days since they entered, but not a single one of them has returned. Kulas looked at the door with a pondering look on his face. Tianyang looked at Elder Sun and asked, "Do you also plan on participating?" She shook her head. "No, I have no interest in the tomb." "Then why did you even come here in the first place?" Tianyang raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. I have my own reasons." After a brief pause, she looked at him and continued, "You're entering the tomb, right?" He nodded with a serious expression. "Is there anything I can say that will persuade you otherwise?" Tianyang stayed silent, but his expression was as stubborn as ever. Elder Sun sighed, "How stupid of me to think I could persuade you when it hasn't worked since the beginning. I know you're worried about me, but I have to grow stronger no matter what." "I'm sorry, Senior," Tianyang said. "Who would be worried about a reckless brat like you?" Elder Sun sneered. Then she continued, "Give me your hand, it'll repair the life-saving treasure in you." However, Tianyang merely reacted with a puzzled look on his face. "What life-saving treasure? I don't have anything like that on me," he said. Without explaining further, Elder Sun grabbed his hand and closed her eyes. The following moment, Tianyang could feel her spiritual energy entering his dantian. Although he couldn't see it, he could feel something being restored inside his body. Once she repaired the treasure, Elder Sun opened her eyes to see a baffled look on Tianyang's face. "What is going on?" he inquired again. Elder Sun then explained, "After seeing how you love to court death so much, I planted a life-saving treasure within your body." "When did you do something like that?" Tianyang exclaimed. She sighed, "Long before you even became an inner disciple. However, it never activated until recently." "Recently? How recently?" Tianyang had a premonition that he already knew the answer before even asking. "About a month after you disappeared from the sect, I suppose," Elder Sun answered. Tianyang immediately recalled how he managed to survive the massive sea demon strike. "That was because of the life-saving treasure you'd given me?" Tianyang muttered in a dazed voice. "That's right," she immediately replied. "I don't know what situation you were in at that time, but the life-saving treasure only activates when it senses certain death, teleporting you to the nearest safe place. In that case, at that time her family had already been. Even though he had a suspicion that the Huang family hadn't survived the sea demon's attack, having confirmation was an entirely different matter." Why didn't you tell me before?" Tianyang suddenly glared at Elder Sun with a hint of anger in his gaze. If he'd known about it beforehand, he could have saved the entire Huang family, and things on the desolate continent would have played out differently. "We encountered those bastards because we searched for Xiao Li's family. If they had been alive, she could have survived, her entire family could have survived. Why didn't you tell me, Senior Son?" "Why?" Tianyang suddenly shouted at her with tears flowing down his face. Elder Sun was too stunned by Tianyang's outburst to give him a response in time. She could only stare at Tianyang's crying face, something she'd only ever seen once before, and even then, it wasn't as emotional. C1369 Tombs Restriction. Chapter 1369 Tombs Restriction. 1369 Tombs Restriction. After seeing Tianyang's expression, Elder Sun's entire being froze on the spot, her mind blank. Why didn't she tell Tianyang about the life-saving treasure? Because she wanted to surprise him? Because she didn't want it to seem like she cared too much about him? Or was it simply due to negligence? Elder Sun would have had a hard time answering Tianyang's question even if he wasn't staring at her with such an intense gaze. What's happening there? Did he get rejected or something? Isn't he a little too old to cry like a baby? The people around them were entertained by the situation. However, Tianyang quickly regained control over his emotions and muttered, "Please take back the life-saving treasure." Elder Sun's eyes widened with shock. What are you saying? I don't know why you're angry, but if you're going to explore the tomb, I don't care about that. Just take it back or I'll do it my way. Seeing the stubborn look on Tianyang's face, Elder Sun merely sighed and silently retrieved the life-saving treasure from his body. "There are you." Right as Elder Sun opened her mouth to speak, Tianyang suddenly bowed to her and said, "Thank you for everything until now, Senior Sunday." Without explaining further, Tianyang turned around and walked away, leaving Elder Sun completely dumbfounded. What is this feeling in my heart? Why does it hurt so much? He's just a mere disciple. Elder Sun wondered to herself as she watched Tianyang's figure disappear into the crowd, as she had never felt such an emotion before. After witnessing what unfolded before him, Kulas spoke in a solemn tone, "I don't know what happened to him, but he was in a miserable shape when I found him, almost as if he witnessed his lover being killed before his eyes. Good luck." Kulas went after Tianyang, leaving Elder Sun alone in a daze. A few people in the crowd saw this as an opportunity to approach Elder Sunday. "Excuse me, fairy, stay away from me, you worms." Elder Sun suddenly glared at them with intense killing intent, sending chills down their entire being. Her presence was so immense that it attracted the attention of several experts. What is that woman doing here? I almost didn't recognize her because of her cultivation, but isn't she? These experts recognized her after staring at her face for a moment, their faces filled with surprise after realizing her identity. Meanwhile, Tianyang finally stopped moving after moving far away from his original location. After calming down, he realized that had directed some of his self-hatred toward Elder Sun after learning that she was responsible for saving him from certain death. "I'm truly pathetic," he sighed inwardly. While it was true that Elder Sun had secretly hidden a life-saving treasure in his body, it wasn't done out of malice but because she was worried for him. Despite that, I pushed my responsibility to her when I saw a chance. If it weren't for Senior Sun, I wouldn't have survived long enough to bond with Huang Xiaoli, much less spend so much time with her. Tianyang realized that he should have thanked Elder Sun instead of cutting ties with her. However, this might be for the best. I have relied on her for many years, ever since I was an outer disciple. I cannot rely on her to save me every time my life is in danger for the rest of my life, or I will never truly become strong. He knew that had messed up his relationship with Elder Sun, but he also understood that he could not rely on her forever. It was a bitter way to end such a good relationship, and he might even regret it until the end of time, but there was no going back. "There you are." Kulas eventually caught up to him. "Sorry you had to see that, and I even left you back there," Tianyang said to him. Kulas did not immediately respond, as he was too distracted by Tianyang's expression. "You can still go back and apologize to her," he said a moment later. Tianyang couldn't help but show a bittersweet smile after hearing his words. Apologize? She's not the type to accept an apology like that, and it's not like we had a special relationship. "Are you sure about that?" Kulas raised an eyebrow. He then continued, "Even if that was the case, why did you return the life-saving treasure? That was quite the stupid thing to do if you ask me. You're now going to enter the tomb empty-handed. Don't kick yourself later." Tianyang shrugged. "If I die inside the tomb, that simply means I wasn't fated to achieve great things in this life. And because I cut ties with Senior Sun, my death won't bother her as much." What a twisted way of thinking. But I don't dislike it. Kulas chuckled. He then continued, "It's a pity, especially since that senior was very pretty. Even if she's the prettiest woman in the world, nothing will happen between us. She's a sect elder and I am a disciple. We are fated to walk different paths." Kulas shook his head. "Fate works in mysterious ways, and you speak as if you can control or see one's fate, but we both know that isn't possible." "What?" Right as Tianyang opened his mouth to respond, the surroundings suddenly grew rowdy. "What's happening? Is the tomb finally open to the rest of us? It should be about that time now." Tianyang looked around. Kulas used his divine sense to see the situation and said, "They've returned. The 9 immortal clans just left the tomb." After a brief pause he continued, "But not all of them. Only a dozen people have come out and we know far more have gone inside. Let's see what they have to say." Sometime later, those who exited the tomb revealed the situation inside the tomb, which greatly surprised everyone there. Regardless of your cultivation, whether you are a Spirit Emperor or a Golden Immortal, your cultivation will be restricted to the 9th level Spirit King once you enter the tomb, and you are forbidden from leaving the tomb for 7 days. C1370 Entering Han Zexian's Tomb. Chapter 1370 Entering Han Zexian's Tomb. 1370 Entering Han Zexian's Tomb. Our cultivations are restricted to the peak of Spirit King? What about those already below that level? Someone inquired, as he was only a 3rd level Spirit King. Then you will simply remain at that level. This information caused an uproar. So those below 9th level Spirit King are at a severe disadvantage. What's the point of restricting our cultivation when those above peak Spirit King are still able to squash everyone else with superior techniques and experience? Aren't they trying to even the playing field with the limit? What about the tomb itself? What kind of environment is it? Someone else asked. The tomb is divided into 2 sections. The first section of the tomb is trial-based, where those below the 9th level Spirit King are able to do trials for cultivation resources. These resources are incredibly rare and potent and would allow even a Spirit Lord to reach peak Spirit King in a short time. However, these resources cannot be taken out of the tomb, so you'll have to use them before leaving. Tianyang's eyes lit ablaze with excitement after hearing this information. He couldn't be any happier to hear that he could quickly raise his cultivation inside the tomb. In the second section, a vast expanse filled with mysteries and powerful magical beasts could be explored freely. The scale of this tomb is unfathomably massive, and it's not a place one could fully experience in a few weeks. What do you think? Kulas suddenly asked. They'll be spending all of my time doing trials until I reach peak Spirit King, he calmly said. I know I said that I'd explore the tomb with you, but this is not something I can give up, nor is there a point for those below Spirit King to explore any further. Kulas nodded. I understand, but worry not, I didn't intend on going straight to the second section in the first place. My real purpose of visiting the tomb was to train, and I couldn't care less about Han Zexian's legacy. These trials sound fun, so I'll do some with you. Tianyang nodded. Sometime later, the representative from the 9 immortal clans announced, it has been 7 days since the tomb opened. Han Zexian's tomb is officially open to the public now. However, to prevent a cluster, only 1,000 may enter every 15 minutes. Good luck, fellow cultivators. The moment he said that, hundreds of people charged into the ground, disappearing from the desolate continent. Since the people in the front went inside first, Tianyang and Kulas still had to wait a while before it was their turn. Several hours later, Tianyang and Kulas jumped into the portal in the ground, entering the tomb. The moment they stepped foot into the tomb, Kulas immediately felt his cultivation being suppressed by an unfathomable force, lowering it to the peak of Spirit King. As for Tianyang, who was only a Spirit Lord, he didn't feel anything different, but he had a look of awe on his face. This is, inside a tomb? Tianyang swallowed nervously as he stared at the vast land before him, almost as if had entered a different world. Is this your first time exploring a tomb? Kulas asked after seeing his excited face. Of course. But you sound experienced. No, this is also my first time exploring a tomb, a real one at least. There are fake tombs? Naturally. Those are much smaller in size and are often traps for cultivators. Kulas then asked, where should we go? Unless you have a map, we can only pick a direction and hope for the best. Tianyang shrugged. In other words, leave it to fate, huh? Kulas smiled. Tianyang retrieved his sword and casually tossed it into the sky. When it landed a moment later, he said, let's go where the tip of the sword is directed. Sounds fun. The two of them proceeded to fly in that direction. Several hours later. This place is truly massive. We've traveled for hours, but we've encountered nothing but grass. Kulas sighed. Right as Kulas finished his sentence, he noticed something appear on the horizon and continued, I see something up front. Sometime later they landed before the thing that Kulas saw. There were already hundreds of people there, and they were all sitting silently around a tall altar made of stone. What's happening here? Tianyang mumbled with a pondering face as they approached the stone altar. How can they be so carefree and cultivate out in the open like this? Aren't they worried about getting attacked? Kulas wondered out loud. When they reached within a certain distance of the altar, a voice suddenly rang inside their head. You have entered the trials area. While inside this area, you are forbidden from attacking another challenger. Rebels will be met with a swift death. When you are ready to start the trial, just say it out loud. Tianyang could feel the atmosphere change when he entered the trial area, almost as though had been teleported to another place, but the scenery did not change. Well, that explains why they seemed to carefree. Kulas shrugged. Meanwhile, Tianyang quickly sat down and closed his eyes. After taking a deep breath, he muttered out loud, "Begin trial." The very next moment, Tianyang could feel something enter his consciousness, causing him to fall into a trance-like state. When he opened his eyes a moment later, he found himself in an entirely different place, standing on a small, empty island while being surrounded by water. An ocean? Did I get teleported, or is this an illusion? He wondered out loud as he looked around. Suddenly, a familiar voice resounded. Defeat your opponent to complete the trial. The very next second, Tianyang noticed something massive emerging from the water in the distance. That's. Tianyang swallowed nervously when he saw its snake-like figure. A flying leviathan. He exclaimed. The entity that came out of the water was a flying leviathan, and it was soaring towards Tianyang at a rapid speed. C1371 Golden Ginseng Roots? Chapter 1371 Golden Ginseng Roots. 1371 Golden Ginseng Roots? Shit. How am I supposed to defeat a flying leviathan at my level? I'd only be asking for a quick death. Tianyang panicked a little when he saw the flying leviathan soaring in his direction. However, upon closer inspection, he noticed that the flying leviathan had the cultivation of a 6th-level spirit lord, being only a single level above his own. With that being said, that solitary level represented a significant gap that most people wouldn't be able to surpass. Tianyang gritted his teeth and muttered to himself, "How are you going to avenge Xiao if you cannot even take care of a single flying leviathan?" Without waiting for the flying leviathan to arrive, Tianyang tightly held onto his sword and flew towards the monster on his own accord with a fierce expression on his face, Evening releasing a battle cry right before confronting the sea demon. The flying leviathan had an immensely large figure compared to him. Just a single scale on its body was enough to cover Tianyang's entire figure. Moreover, it was extremely swift and agile with its movements. Fortunately, its attacks were quite simple, as it only knew how to swing its tail and charge at him in a straight line. With that being said, Tianyang still struggled to dodge its attacks and nearly got hit several times. Every time he narrowly dodged its attack, Tianyang would counterattack, sliding his blade across the flying leviathan's body. However, due to the thick scales protecting its body, Tianyang could only leave behind superficial scratches on its body. I don't need to kill it in several strikes. Not that I am even capable of such a feat with my pathetic strength. Instead, I will bleed it to death. With his plan solidified inside his mind, Tianyang would spend the next several hours dancing in the sky with the flying leviathan, slowly leaving behind cuts that were just deep enough to make it bleed. As time passed, he became more adept at dodging the flying leviathan's attacks with increased ease, allowing him to focus more on managing his spiritual energy usage so that he doesn't exhaust himself before the flying leviathan is dead. However, he got a little too comfortable when he saw how the flying leviathan's body was soaked in its own blood, and he failed to dodge one of its attacks. When struck by the flying leviathan's tail, Tianyang felt as though an entire mountain had been hurled at him, propelling him into the distance. Shit. Tianyang coughed up a mouthful of blood right before he smacked into the ocean, creating a powerful wave that spread in all directions. He could tell that his entire left arm was broken as well as the left side of his ribs. I need to get out of the water. He could see the flying leviathan charging at him with its mouth wide open. After emerging from the water, Tianyang reached for his spatial ring, only to realize at that moment that it had disappeared from his finger. Did I drop it? Forced to use his own spiritual energy to recover from his injuries, Tianyang stopped attacking and consumed half of his remaining spiritual energy to recover just enough to make the pain endurable. Die already, you damn fish. Tianyang roared as he relentlessly swung his sword at the flying leviathan like a madman despite the agonizing pain in his body with each swing. After another hour of struggle, the flying leviathan finally closed its eyes and fell from the sky. I feel like dying as well. Just as he was on the verge of losing consciousness, Tianyang suddenly felt a burst of energy flow into his body, causing his cultivation to immediately break through to the 6th-level Spirit Lord. What an amazing feeling, Tianyang thought to himself as he opened his eyes. I am back at the altar? When he opened his eyes, he could see the stone altar in front of him as well as the other cultivators. A familiar voice resounded in his head, and an object materialized out of thin air and landed on his lap the following moment. This is. He couldn't believe what was sitting on his lap. Golden ginseng roots. I have only read about these in scrolls. The golden ginseng roots could not only cleanse his body of impurities, it also contained a large amount of spiritual energy. He looked around to see if anyone saw the treasure. Seeing that everyone had their eyes closed, seemingly in their own trial, Tianyang immediately tossed the golden ginseng roots into his mouth and began chewing. Every time he chewed on the roots, an outburst of rich spiritual energy would surge from the medicine. Moreover, it cleansed a large amount of impurities from his body. After consuming the treasure, Tianyang closed his eyes and began cultivating. His cultivation that had just reached the 6th level Spirit Lord began to soar again, quickly approaching the 7th level, then the 8th level, only stopping once he was on the verge of entering the 9th level. Tianyang opened his eyes with a look of disbelief on his face. He's never experienced anything remotely close to what Head just experienced. None of the treasures Head purchased or found before could compare to the golden ginseng roots. On Zexian's tomb. What an amazing place. I definitely won't leave until I reach Peak Spirit King. He turned to look at Kulas, who was sitting beside him. Now that I think about it, how long did it take me to finish the trial? He wondered. Suddenly, someone nearby collapsed on the ground with blood flowing from his eyes and nose. What the hell just happened? Startled, Tianyang stared at the person who'd just collapsed. I don't sense any heartbeat. He's dead. Then the corpse began disintegrating, quickly disappearing into thin air. What the? Where did the corpse go? Tianyang was left speechless by what Head just witnessed. C1372 4 Types of Trials. Chapter 1372 4 Types of Trials 1372 4 Types of Trials. About an hour after Tianyang finished his trial, Kulas opened his eyes, and a treasure materialized on his lap a moment later. You finished already? Kulas looked at Tianyang with a surprised look on his face. He started the trial about 10 minutes after Tianyang did, yet had somehow finished later. Yes, Tianyang nodded, glancing at Kulas with a calm expression. How long ago? About an hour, I guess. Impressive. And what kind of trial did you undergo? Kulas continued asking. I had to fight a flying leviathan. So not everyone receives the same trial? How interesting. Suddenly, another person there abruptly coughed up a mouthful of blood before collapsing on the ground, startling Kulas. What the? Tianyang calmly looked at the person who'd just collapsed and said, he died. What? Kulas looked at him with wide eyes. I've seen this happen several times since I finished my trial. My guess is that those who die during their trial will die with their real body as well, he said. That's quite cruel, but considering how precious the rewards are, I'm not too surprised. Kulas muttered as he watched the body disappear into thin air. I don't know why that happens. Tianyang said, referring to the disappearing body. It was probably absorbed by the tomb as nourishment, said Kulas. Nourishment? You make it sound as if the tomb is alive. Sort of. While it's not actually alive, it still requires a massive amount of spiritual energy to operate, so it'll take whatever it can get. Kulas hypothesized. Anyways, here you go. Kulas suddenly extended his hands toward Tianyang. What are you doing? Tianyang looked at him with wide eyes, seemingly in disbelief. What does it look like? I'm giving you my treasure since I don't need it. You can't be serious. Tianyang refused to believe that someone as generous as Kulas existed in their world. Even if it won't affect your cultivation, it will improve other areas. Kulas shrugged. I know my body better than anyone. Even if I consume 100 of these, it won't affect me. And since I cannot bring these treasures out of the tomb, I might as well give them to you to speed up your cultivation. In that case, thank you. Tianyang eventually accepted the treasure, feeling a little apprehensive. Kulas was being so generous that it was actually suspicious. After all, Tianyang was used to having things taken away from him more than receiving them. Go ahead and eat it. I'll watch over you just in case, Kulas said a moment later. Okay. Tianyang sat in the lotus position again and stared at the treasure in his grasp for a moment, feeling as though he was in a dream. The treasure Kulas received from his trial was different from his golden ginseng roots. It was a valuable treasure known as the Red Dragon's Muscle, a potent medicine for boosting one's muscles and overall physique. Of course, it wasn't any less valuable than the golden ginseng roots. After consuming the Red Dragon's Muscle, Tianyang could immediately feel his muscles squirming around inside his body, almost as though they gained their own consciousness. Omicronim, he could feel his muscles expanding and contrasting constantly, as if someone was massaging it. The experience was painful at first, but it gradually became more comfortable. Soon, his cultivation began to soar once again, entering 9th level Spirit Lord in the blink of an eye. Sometime later, Tianyang opened his eyes and stood up, feeling the prowess of a 1st level Spirit King coursing through his entire being. It hasn't even been a day since we entered the tomb and I've gone from the 5th level Spirit Lord to 1st level Spirit King. This speed of progress is unfathomable for someone as talentless as me. He looked at the clear sky and sighed in a low voice. Hanzishin ha? I'll worship you until the day I die for giving me this opportunity. Shall we continue to the next trial? Tianyang looked at Kulas, who nodded with an excited smile. They left the stone altar shortly after and began wandering the tomb. Several thousands of miles and many hours later, they arrived before another altar. However, the altar had a different appearance compared to the previous altar. Instead of stone, it appeared to be made out of silver. Moreover, there were far less people taking the trial. As they approached the altar, someone standing outside the trial zone said to them, "I hope you know what you're getting yourself into." Tianyang halted his steps and looked at the middle-aged woman with a puzzled expression. "Judging by your reaction, is this your first trial?" she asked. "No, this would be our second." "Then in case you didn't know, not all trials in the tomb are equal. Some are much harder than others." Tianyang looked at the altar and asked, "Does it have anything to do with the altar's appearance?" "Correct. There are 4 types of altars. Starting from the easiest trials: stone altar, silver altar, gold altar, and jade altar. Naturally, the more difficult the trial, the better the rewards. With that being said, about 70% of the people that took this trial have died thus far. 70% casualty rate." Tianyang swallowed nervously. He wasn't sure about the casualty rate for the stone altar, but had witnessed 16 people die in just a few minutes. "Thank you for the information." After thanking the woman, Tianyang entered the zone and sat before the altar without the slightest hesitation on his face. Kulas followed him shortly after with a slight smile. The woman stared at them with wide eyes. Young and foolish, what a pity. Without saying anything else, she continued waiting outside the zone, seemingly waiting for someone or something. After mentally preparing himself and taking a deep breath, Tianyang closed his eyes and muttered, "Begin trial." C1373 Fish Pond. Chapter 1373 Fish Pond. 1373 Fish Pond. Tianyang opened his eyes a moment after he began the trial, finding himself surrounded by trees, and there was a large pond beside him. This is... He didn't immediately recognize his location, but once he did, his eyes widened with surprise. "This is the fish pond located near my village. The villagers come here often to fish. But why is the trial taking place here?" The village was his hometown and where he spent most of his life until he became a disciple of the Immortal monastery. It took him a moment to recognize the place, not because it had been a long time since he went there, but because it was a place filled with bad memories, a place he wanted to forget about. Suddenly, Tianyang sensed a presence appear above him, causing him to look at the sky. His eyes widened with shock after seeing the individual hovering above the pond. Once he snapped out of his daze, Tianyang's eyes flickered with anger and killing intent. "I don't know why you are part of the trial, but I welcome it." Tianyang could hardly control his emotions after seeing the face of the cultivator who killed his mother and sister for the first time since the incident. When he was little, he would often visit the fish pond with his mother and sister. On one of these trips, they encountered 2 cultivators, both of them engaged in a fierce fight. Tianyang and his family immediately ran away, but alas, they were unable to outrun the techniques the cultivators were throwing at each other. Tianyang's mother and sister were instantly blown up by one of these techniques. As for Tianyang, had somehow managed to survive, but he was badly injured. "Defeat your opponent." The trial's voice resounded. Tianyang grinned. "I don't know your names, but I have imprinted your faces onto my soul. When I find you bastards, I will make you experience the feeling of losing your family, just like you'd made me suffer." One of the cultivators was a middle-aged man with long red hair and red eyes, while the other was an old man with long white hair and a short beard. The opponent before him was the cultivator with white hair. Tianyang didn't even bother to look at his opponent's cultivation before charging at him. The old man didn't even bat an eyelid and blocked Tianyang's strike with seemingly little to no effort at all. Tianyang didn't care in the slightest and continued to swing his arm relentlessly. Despite being adopted, his mother loved him unconditionally, and his sister treated him as though they were real brothers and sisters. Although he was only able to live with them for a few short years, they were everything to him during that time. "Because of you they are dead." Tianyang's aura burned with rage as he unleashed the anger he'd been carrying since then. He became a cultivator solely because he wanted to avenge his family. He endured all the hardship and suffering for so many years just so he could one day pierce the hearts of his family's murderers. Ayawa. Tianyang's anger burned with a different intensity compared to the pain he felt from losing Huang Shaoli, and it propelled his prowess to heights that had never seen before. Unfortunately, he was too blinded by the anger to see it, and before he realized it, his opponent was kneeling on the ground beside the pond. Although it seemed like the old man had the advantage at first, he was unable to keep up with Tianyang, who only grew fiercer with each passing moment. Is this it? Tianyang calmly stared at the old man before him, feeling no sense of pride or accomplishment despite defeating the person who killed his family. In the end, you are nothing but a fake. Until I find the real you and kill you, I will never truly be at peace. Tianyang's expression became even more determined than the time when he first vowed to become a cultivator to avenge his family. Whoosh. With one more arm flick, Tianyang severed the old man's head, completing the trial. Tianyang immediately sensed a surge of spiritual energy flowing from the old man's corpse into his body, propelling his cultivation to second-level Spirit King. Even though the difficulty of this trial was much more difficult than his last, he was barely injured the entire fight, even clearing the trial much faster. Moreover, as his mind began to clear up, he could sense a certain connection with his sword. The sensation. Did I somehow manage to grasp the understanding of sword aura during the trial? He wondered to himself. What nonsense am I thinking? There's no way I would comprehend sword aura with my level of talents. But he quickly disregarded that idea. After all, sword aura was a relatively new discovery during his era and not something that could be grasped by a talentless Spirit King like him. Even peak geniuses with the sword require hundreds if not thousands of years of rigorous training to begin understanding sword aura, much less learn it. Once Tianyang returned to the tomb, another treasure appeared before him. This is a divine unity elixir. A single drop of this could improve one's talent and level of comprehension. And I have a whole bottle of it in my hands. This treasure is 10 times more valuable than the golden ginseng roots. Tianyang couldn't believe his eyes. Had only gone up a single level of difficulty, yet the reward was 10 times more valuable. Without any hesitation, Tianyang chugged the entire bottle of divine unity elixir. Although his cultivation did not increase, he could feel something changing within his body, fundamentally. When he opened his eyes several hours later, Tianyang felt as though he had just experienced rebirth. I can do it. If I survive this place, I will be able to avenge my family. No, I will survive. Tianyang's eyes flickered with unfathomable determination. C1374 Kulas Background. Chapter 1374 Kulas Background. 1374 Kulas Background. Your aura feels quite different now. Kulas' voice resounded shortly after Tianyang emerged from his cultivation. Tianyang turned to look at Kulas, who was sitting beside him. How long have I been cultivating? He asked. I'm not sure since you started before I completed the trial, but I only waited 2 hours. Kulas shrugged. Here you go. Kulas didn't even bother offering his treasure and directly tossed it at Tianyang, treating it as though it was trash. Seeing the treasure being tossed gave Tianyang a scare. What are you doing to such a precious treasure? Are you insane? He hastily caught the treasure. Kulas merely chuckled at his reaction. They'll count properly this time, he then said. Thanks. Tianyang quickly consumed the treasure, and his cultivation soared to 3rd level Spirit King. That only took you 6 hours, Kulas said sometime later. I cannot get enough of this feeling. Tianyang mumbled as he stared at his palms, his entire being surging with spiritual energy. On to the next trial? Kulas asked. Of course. They left the place shortly after and began searching for the next trial. Over the next several months, Tianyang and Kulas would go from trial to trial without rest. In the span of 8 months, Tianyang had managed to clear a dozen trials, 8 of them being stone altars and 3 of them being silver altars. The latest trial he cleared was a gold altar, which nearly took his life. Every single trial had something to do with his past. Eventually, Tianyang realized that the trials were all making him fight against his heart demon, something that had traumatized him to a certain extent. Every time he cleared a trial, Tianyang noticed that his shoulders would feel a little lighter, almost as though an invisible weight were being lifted. Not only did these trials boost his cultivation, but they also cleared his mind and eased his heart demons. Tianyang's cultivation soared all the way to 8th level Spirit King after completing the Gold Altar's trial. You're only a level away from the peak of Spirit King. Kulas smiled. Tianyang nodded. Once I reach 9th level Spirit King, we will be able to explore the rest of the tomb. Due to how massive the tomb was, finding the trials was a challenge itself. Furthermore, since nobody had a map, they were forced to wander randomly until they found a trial. The longest it took them to find one trial was almost an entire month. As Tianyang and Kulas traveled, Tianyang suddenly asked, I've been wondering for a while now, but what kind of background do you come from? Since you're willing to give up so many treasures that normal people would kill for, it's safe to assume that you come from a wealthy family, right? You're asking me that now? Kulas had a slight smile on his face. Even though they've traveled together for almost a year now, neither of them tried to ask the other any personal questions. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Kulas pondered for a moment and said, He'll tell you if you tell me about your background first. Tianyang casually nodded without any hesitation. I was abandoned shortly after birth, so I don't know my birth parents. I was adopted by a single mother who already had a daughter who was a year younger than me. We resided in a small village. My family died when I turned 8 and I have been living alone since then. I joined the Immortal Monastery when I turned 16, and that's where I have been ever since. You grew up in a village? I didn't expect that. Kulas looked at him with a surprised face. Where did you think I was from? Tianyang raised an eyebrow. Not sure, but definitely not a village. Perhaps a hard-working family in some city? You don't look like someone who grew up in a village. I'll take that as a compliment. Tianyang shook his head. Now tell me about your background. All right. Kulas nodded. What's with the serious expression? Tianyang wondered to himself when he noticed Kulas' change in expression. To be completely honest with you, I came from. Right as Kulas opened his mouth, he was interrupted by a voice that Tianyang did not recognize. Look at what we have here. If it isn't Kulas. Tianyang and Kulas halted their movements and turned to look in the direction of the voice. Not far away, a group of 5 individuals were slowly approaching them. Tianyang did not recognize their faces, but he immediately recognized the uniforms they were wearing. They belonged to the Immortal clans. Tianyang gritted his teeth as he quickly tried to control his emotions. Even though it had almost been a year since he encountered the Immortal clans, he immediately recognized their uniform. What do you guys want? Kulas asked them with a slight frown on his face. Nothing really, but I'm curious. Shouldn't you be in the second section? What are you doing here in the first section with some nobody? The person leading the group asked as he glanced at Tianyang. I am merely accompanying a friend, but I don't see how that is any of your business. Kulas responded with a cold expression, something Tianyang was not used to seeing. In fact, this was Tianyang's first time seeing Kulas acting so seriously. A friend? You and this nobody? Are you serious? The group of 5 turned to look at Tianyang with widened eyes, seemingly filled with disbelief. Watch your mouth, Gulim. I will not let you badmouth my friend in my presence. Kulas narrowed his eyes. The person in the front, Gulim, laughed out loud. That serious Kulas actually befriended a talentless trash that's not even a spirit emperor. That's hilarious. I wonder how the others will react once they learn of this shocking news. Chapter 1375 Kulas Background 2. Chapter 1375 Kulas Background 2. 1375 Kulas Background 2. How dare you? Kulas' aura suddenly exploded when Gulim called Tianyang a talentless trash, his gaze filled with killing intent. Are you sure you want to fight the 5 of us by yourself over trash like that? In case you forgot, we're all limited to peak Spirit King. Even you wouldn't be able to defeat us with such a restriction. Gulim spoke with an arrogant grin on his face. We want no until... Tianyang interrupted Kulas by placing a hand on his shoulder. It's fine, he shook his head. But they're not wrong. I am talentless, so there's no need to fight over it. Ahaha. At least this trash knows his place. The group laughed out loud. Kulas could feel Tianyang's grip on his shoulder strengthen. Seeing this, Kulas closed his eyes and took a deep breath, easing his anger. Are you finished? So we'll be leaving now. Kulas said a moment later. What's the rush? Since we haven't seen each other for so long, why don't we chat a little longer? Gulim said. I have nothing to say to you. If you have so much free time, why don't you spend it looking for Han Zexian's legacy instead of wasting it here? Kulas sneered. Han Zexian's legacy? We've been looking for 8 months straight without any result, so we're taking a small break for the time being. What about you? What have you been doing for the past several months? Seeing how he's in the first section, he's probably doing trials. What a waste of time. Right? It's not like the rewards will even benefit him. Hey, didn't we just pass a Jade Altar? Why don't you try it, Kulas? I heard it's the hardest trial available in this place. Tianyang's eyes flickered with a profound light after hearing this information. The trial within the gold altar nearly killed me, but its reward was tremendously beneficial. If I can complete a Jade Altar's trial? Kulas turned to look at Tianyang, and when he saw the look on Tianyang's face, he immediately smiled and said, "Sure." Seriously? You're going to do the trial? The group didn't think Kulas would actually agree to it. Nobody has ever passed the trial even though tens of thousands have attempted during the last 8 months. You're just going to walk into your own grave, even if you are the genius of the Immortal Might clan. Immortal Might clan? Tianyang raised an eyebrow. Although he suspected that Kulas belonged to a powerful family from the beginning, he didn't think that it was part of the Immortal clans. Kulas looked at Tianyang with an apologetic smile and spoke with divine sense. "Sorry, I didn't mean to keep it from you. After learning of your situation, I just couldn't bring myself to tell you that I was from the Immortal clans." Tianyang shook his head and said, "If I never asked you about your background, you had no reason to tell me, so there's no need to apologize. And it's not as though I have a grudge against everyone from the Immortal clans, only those responsible for the confinement." "I see, thank you, I didn't know you cared about my life," Kulas said to the group a moment later. "Cocky bastard, let's see if you'll survive the trial." Gulim sneered. Tianyang and Kulas followed Gulim and his group to the Jade Altar, which was only an hour away from their location. Upon arriving at their destination, Tianyang could see 3 people sitting around an altar made of jade with several hundred spectators. There are more spectators than there are challengers. This was Tianyang's first time seeing such a sight after witnessing a dozen different trials. By the time Tianyang and the others landed around the altar, one of the 3 challengers suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood before collapsing on the ground. Omicronim, nobody there expressed any surprise and continued to spectate the other 2 in silence. Tianyang looked at Kulas and said, "You don't have to do this with me. Are you saying that because you don't want me to die with you, or you think you can pass it but I can't?" Kulas asked with a slight frown. "You have no reason to risk your life for this trial. What about the previous trials we've done together? This one is different. Nobody has ever completed it." Tianyang shook his head. "Then why are you taking the trial? You can reach Peak Spirit King if you just continue to do easier trials." Tianyang looked at the Jade Altar and sighed, "My talent may have improved a lot since I started doing the trial, but it is still insignificant when compared to the majority of people out there. I won't be able to achieve my dreams if I continue going the easy route. If I don't survive this trial, I am simply not fated for anything else." "You're going to partake in the trial? A talentless trash like you? You won't even last a minute." Gulim and his group were in disbelief after learning this information. Tianyang smiled at the group and said, "Would you like to bet on that? That would be pointless since you'll die if I win. What can I possibly get out of a corpse?" Gulim sneered. "How about I make the bet then?" Kulas suddenly said. "Now that's more like it." Gulim smiled. "What shall we bet on? Whether he lives or dies?" Kulas nodded. "I will bet on him surviving the trial." "What are the stakes?" Gulim then asked. Kulas pondered for a moment before speaking. "He'll bet my ancestral gauntlet." Gulim's expression froze after hearing Kulas' words, and the people behind him looked dumbstruck. "Are you serious? You're willing to bet on your favorite weapon for this talentless trash?" Gulim held a serious expression as he asked for confirmation. "Don't look down on my friend. You call him talentless, but there are many kinds of talents in this world, and his talent to survive is the best I've ever seen." Kulas nodded with a confident smile on his face. C1376 Jade Altar. Chapter 1376 Jade Altar. 1376 Jade Altar. Since I am betting my ancestral gauntlet, you should put something of similar value on the line. If you don't have anything like that, the 5 of you can work together to cover the difference." Kulas said to Gulim, who was gritting his teeth in anger. Gulim was not angry because Kulas was betting on Tianyang's survival. He was frustrated because he had nothing close to the value of Kulas' ancestral gauntlet. He turned to look at his 4 buddies and said, "Let's do it. There's no way that talentless trash will survive the Jade trial, so this will be an easy win for us. It's essentially free money." The four quickly nodded, agreeing to pool together their resources for the bet. None of them believed that Tianyang could survive the Jade Altar's trial, so there was no hesitation in their decision. Eventually they gathered a small mountain of treasures for the bet. Tianyang's eyes widened with shock after seeing the difference. Kulas only had one item, a pair of gauntlets. However, Gulim and his group had at least 20 different treasures. Just how valuable is that gauntlet? And he's willing to bet it on me? Tianyang swallowed nervously. Fortunately for him, he wouldn't have to worry about the aftermath if he were to lose the trial, as he would be dead. However, he was still pressured by the knowledge that his death would lead to Kulas losing his precious treasure. Hey, do you really have to bet on such a valuable treasure? Tianyang asked Kulas with a stiff look on his face. Kulas responded with a smile, the value of the treasure is how much trust one have in you, in your talent. Tianyang clenched his fists after hearing Kulas' words. He's never had anyone put so much faith in him before, much less someone with a status as profound as Kulas. If I had a sworn brother, is this what it would feel like? Tianyang wondered to himself. Hey trash bastard, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and die in the trial already. Gulim suddenly glared at Tianyang with clear disdain. Kulas narrowed his eyes and he responded instead, one more thing. If he survives the trial, you will take back all the bullshit you spewed and show some respect to my friend. Ah. If he survives, not only will I respect him, I will kowtow before him and call him my grandfather for the rest of my life. Gulim laughed so viciously that his eyes became teary. Hearing this, Kulas turned to look at Tianyang and nodded with a serious expression. Good luck, friend. Tianyang nodded with a slight smile. I will see you in a bit. Without hesitation, Tianyang walked towards the Jade Altar, where only one challenger remained by the time he reached it. Is he really going to challenge the trial with that level of cultivation base? There are better ways to court death. Who even is this guy? I recognized all the people that have challenged the trial, but I don't know him. I saw him talking with some people from the Immortal clans just now. Perhaps he's from there? The spectators were in disbelief when they saw Tianyang entering the trial area, especially after seeing his cultivation that was only at the 8th level Spirit King. Whoever claimed that he's from the Immortal clans, take that back right this instance. How could such talentless trash come from the Immortal clans? Are you mocking the Immortal clans? Gulim suddenly spoke loudly, alerting all of the spectators. He's not from the Immortal clans? Then he must be a nobody. His arrogance is too much for a nobody. How dare he even approach the Jade Altar? Does he think he's better than everyone who's come before him? Hearing so many people badmouth Tianyang, Kulas lost his control and roared, the next person to badmouth my friend will die by my hands. The spectators were startled by Kulas' killing intent, and when they recognized his identity, they immediately stopped talking out loud. Holy shit. Isn't that young Master Kulas from the Immortal Might clan? Did he just call that man his friend? Kulas, he's known for being a brutal and cold person. That man must be very impressive to become such a person's friend. Tianyang had just closed his eyes when he heard Kulas' loud voice. He smiled inwardly. Thank you, my friend. Begin trial? He muttered the following moment. As Tianyang began his trial, Gulim turned to look at Kulas and asked with a serious expression. I seriously don't get it. Why did you befriend someone like him? He's just a nobody. Kulas looked at him and responded in a calm voice. If you'd been there when I first met him, you would feel nothing but respect and admiration for him. Have you ever seen someone desperately hold on to their life? I have, many times. However, none of them were able to move me the same way he did. Have you ever experienced a life or death situation? I have, dozens of times. However, compared to what he's experienced, my experience might as well be a drop in the ocean. He's someone who lives at the border between life and death, an existence that should have long perished with his level of talent. Despite that, he's managed to survive. How does he do it? I want to know. And how can I not respect someone like that? Compared to you bastards who flaunt their talents at every step, he's unfathomably more interesting. Gulim and his friends were at a loss for words after hearing Kulas speak about Tianyang. They've known Kulas for nearly most of their lives, but they have never seen him acting in such a manner before, much less praise someone. Kulas stopped looking at Gulim and quickly glanced at the crowd before sneering in disdain. Even I don't have the qualifications to mock him, much less these cowardly bastards here. Chapter 1377 Jade Altar, 2. Chapter 1377 Jade Altar, 2. 1377 Jade Altar, 2. When Tianyang opened his eyes, he found himself surrounded by trees. Although he didn't immediately recognize his location, his face still made a deep frown, almost as if he subconsciously knew. This place is... Just as Tianyang realized his location, he sensed over 100 presence with immense killing intent suddenly appearing around him, sending shivers down his entire being. Before he could even react, a dozen figures wearing rough clothes jumped out of thin air and swung their weapons at him. Tianyang had started moving even before the figures appeared, allowing him to dodge their attacks. After distancing himself from them, Tianyang took a brief moment to look at these figures' faces and sure enough, he immediately recognized them to be the gold and money bandits. I knew I would eventually have to face this heart demon of mine in one of these trials. Tianyang sighed. Even though he had mentally prepared himself for months, he was already on the verge of being consumed by rage. The only thing that kept him from charging at these bandits was because of their cultivation bases. All of the bandits had a peak Spirit King cultivation base, including those hiding out of sight. After consuming many valuable treasures, Tianyang's talent increased tremendously, to the point where he could fight several ordinary peak Spirit Kings as an 8th-level Spirit King simultaneously. However, there were 100 peak Spirit Kings that surrounded him. Tianyang took a deep breath and calmed himself. The following moment, the bandits charged at him with their daggers and sabers raised, their expressions oozing with bloodlust. Tianyang gritted his teeth and tried his best to block the incoming attacks. He would successfully block several but also miss a few. Every time he confronted the bandits, a few more cuts would appear on his body. Fortunately, none of the attacks that connected were life-threatening and were only shallow wounds. Unfortunately, Tianyang couldn't keep up with the relentless assault and it was only a matter of time before one of the bandits landed a critical hit on him. Realizing this, Tianyang focused on fighting his heart demon instead. After doing so many trials, he noticed a certain thing with these trials. Since these trials tested their heart demons, the trials would get easier if the challenger weakened their heart demon during the trial. However, to defeat one's heart demon was much easier said than done. Even before this trial, Tianyang had been fighting this specific heart demon for months, but alas, he simply couldn't fight the guilt of losing Huang Xiao. If only I had been stronger, if only... His voice resounded inside his head, almost as if he was whispering to himself. Tianyang gritted his teeth and roared, "Shut the fuck up." His eyes flickered profoundly and he continued, "I am no longer talentless." An immense aura suddenly surged from his body. "I will survive this damn trial and avenge Huang Xiao. I will survive and avenge my parents. I will survive and seek justice for Meng Lily. I will survive." Tianyang stopped being defensive and started looking for opportunities to attack. Since he was already having trouble defending against so many opponents at once, it would be even more difficult to attack without leaving himself wide open. Thus, he needed to make every strike count. Unless he was certain that his attack would land and kill his target, Tianyang continued to defend and avoid. Eventually he noticed an opening. Without hesitation he went for the kill. His sword flickered, sending one of the bandits' heads into the sky. However, immediately after killing one of the bandits, 6 of them attacked him from different angles. Tianyang knew that he wouldn't be able to dodge all of them, so he blocked the life-threatening strikes and allowed the less threatening to go through. However, shortly after Tianyang killed the first bandit, another one would jump out of the treelines to join the fight. Tianyang gritted his teeth and continued fighting. An hour later, Tianyang killed 20 bandits, but his condition was worse than ever. His body was riddled with holes and deep cuts, and his entire body was dripping with blood. At this rate, he would perish before killing even half of the bandits there. However, unbeknownst to Tianyang, he was slowly defeating his heart demon. After another hour, right as Tianyang killed his 50th bandit, one of the bandits plunged his dagger into his back. Enduring the reverberating agony coursing through his entire being, Tianyang clenched his teeth with unwavering determination and continued fighting. One would expect Tianyang to slow down as his body continued to weaken, but his movements and attacks only grew fiercer as time passed. 1, 2, 5, 10, 20. It only took Tianyang half an hour to slaughter 20 bandits this time. Meanwhile, at the Jade Altar, Tianyang's real body suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Kulas clenched his fists after seeing this. "Ah, we won the bet." Gu Lim started celebrating after seeing this. "Shut up. He's not dead yet," Kulas exclaimed. Sure enough, Tianyang merely coughed up blood and didn't collapse. Gu Lim sneered, "So what? It's only a matter of time before he dies." And he continued, though, I will give him some credit for lasting longer than the other challengers. Most challengers would perish a few minutes after starting the trial, yet Tianyang had managed to survive 3 hours and counting. In fact, Gu Lim and his group were getting nervous because they had expected Tianyang to die within a minute of starting his trial. Of course, all of that anxiety disappeared when they saw Tianyang cough up blood, which was a sign that he was at his limit and on the verge of death. You can do it. Kulas stared at Tianyang's figure with a profound expression. C1378 God's Fruit? Chapter 1378 God's Fruit 1378 God's Fruit, ha, ha. Tianyang gasped for air as he fell to his knee after his 99th bandit, his body soaked in blood. There were 3 daggers stabbed into his back and a sword skewering his right leg. Moreover, his entire left arm has been missing since it was severed half an hour ago. Of the countless life-or-death situations he had faced, this trial marked his closest brush with death yet, and he still had one opponent left to fight. Tianyang stared at his final opponent with one eye closed, his gaze filled with anger and hatred. The last bandit that stood between him and victory was the leader of the gold and money bandits. You. Tianyang gritted his teeth and pulled out the sword stuck in his leg, enduring the pain. I will kill you. Even though his opponent was only a peak spirit king, Tianyang was already on the verge of exhausting what little spiritual energy he had left. However, almost as though the heavens finally acknowledged Tianyang's struggles and decided to bless him for the first time in his lifetime, his 8th-level Spirit King cultivation that was already a hair's width away from breakthrough suddenly entered the 9th-level Spirit King. His exhausted spiritual energy replenished a decent amount, allowing him to recover some of his injuries with enough to spare for the fight. Ah yeah. Tianyang released a war cry before charging at the bandit leader. Immense killing intent spewed out of Tianyang's eyes as he swung at his opponent relentlessly. After spending several hours physically fighting his heart demon, he arrived at the point where it hardly affected him any longer. The bandit leader was only a little stronger than the other bandits, but it was more than doable for Tianyang, who had a slight upgrade. Tianyang did not immediately kill the bandit leader and decided to slowly kill him instead. He knew that the bandit leader wasn't real, so it was purely to release built-up stress. He severed the bandit leader's limbs one by one, starting with the arms before moving to the legs. When the bandit leader could no longer move, let alone stand, Tianyang covered his body with superficial cuts, almost as though he was trying to bleed the bandit leader to death. By the time Tianyang was done, there was not an area on the bandit leader's body and face where it did not have a sword cut. The voice returned when the bandit leader finally perished. I really did it. Tianyang rested his eyes. When he opened them again, the view of shocked spectators appeared before his eyes. All of them had either wide eyes or wide mouths, or both. You have acquired the qualifications to seek my legacy. A familiar voice that only Tianyang could hear entered his head, followed by information about the legacy's location. However, Tianyang couldn't care less about the legacy, as he was focused on the treasure that appeared before him for clearing the Jade altar's trial. Unbelievably, it was God's fruit, also known as the god of all cultivation medicine. It was an exceedingly rare and valuable treasure that could completely reconstruct a person's innate talent to make it as high as possible. It was a heaven-defying and godlike medicine that had only appeared in the world once before since the beginning of time. However, even though God's fruit could boost one's talent to its maximum potential, everyone has a different limit. For example, Tianyang was born with no talents and could only reach the peak of Spirit Lord. However, after consuming God's fruit and unlocking his maximum innate talent, it allowed him to reach the 9th level of Spirit King. Meanwhile, Kulas was born with enough talents to reach the peak of Spirit Lord, but after consuming God's fruit, he would be able to reach the peak of Spirit Sovereign, thus having a higher limit than Tianyang. God's fruit. He's acquired a God's fruit. The spectators snapped out of their daze when they saw the treasure in Tianyang's hands, their eyes shining with greed. Forget about these ordinary cultivators, even the immortal clans would start a war to acquire God's fruit. Suddenly, someone jumped out of the crowd and charged at Tianyang with clear killing intent. However, before he could even reach Tianyang, an invisible force with unfathomable prowess appeared out of thin air to neutralize the threat, instantly turning the person who charged at Tianyang into a cloud of blood mist. Anyone who dares to steal another's treasure will be removed from existence. The trial's voice resounded loud enough for everyone to hear. Tianyang, hurry up and consume it. Kulas suddenly shouted at him. Wait. Don't eat it. I will buy the god's fruit from you. Gu Lim immediately said. He continued, that god's fruit will only be wasted on someone like you. If you know what's for you, sell it to me. Tianyang turned to look at Gu Lim and sneered, before that, there is something else that you must do. What is it? If I recall correctly, you made a bet with Kulas on whether he'll survive this trial or not. Tianyang narrowed his eyes and continued, we can talk about the god's fruit after you honor your bet. Hearing this, Gu Lim gritted his teeth and handed all of the treasures he and his group bet on to Kulas. There. Now sell me the god's fruit. Gu Lim said afterward. How much are you willing to buy it for? Tianyang asked. 100 million spirit stones. Gu Lim shouted. Tianyang sneered in disdain after hearing the offer, and he said, the last god's fruit was sold for 1 billion spirit stones. Why would I sell mine for any less? Gu Lim clenched his fists and roared, you can't even bring that god's fruit out of this place. So what? That doesn't affect the god's fruit's effects, which means it won't be any less valuable, whether I can take it out of here or not. Tianyang shrugged. If you want buy it at an appropriate price, I'd rather use it for myself. Naturally, he had no intentions of selling the god's fruit even if it killed him, so he was only messing with Gu Lim as a way of taking revenge for treating him like trash. However, Gu Lim didn't know this and thought he actually had a chance to acquire the god's fruit. C1379 Consuming God's Fruit? Chapter 1379 Consuming God's Fruit 1379 Consuming God's Fruit 3. No. 500 million spirit stones. This is my final offer. Although I cannot pay you now, I will definitely pay you once we get out. Gu Lim gritted his teeth and gave Tianyang his new offer. Tianyang did not immediately answer and closed his eyes to ponder, or pretend to think about Gu Lim's offer. Seeing Tianyang's hesitation, Gu Lim tried to convince him further, you can purchase countless powerful treasures with that much money, even 1 or 2 mythic-grade treasures with ease. However, if you refuse, just know that you'll become my immortal Gu clan's enemy. Tianyang opened his eyes a moment later and wore a gentle smile on his face. I understand, he said in a calm voice. Gu Lim immediately smiled back. I take back what I said about you. However, before Gu Lim could even finish his sentence, Tianyang opened his mouth and shoved the god's fruit into his mouth, consuming it with a single bite. Gu Lim couldn't believe his eyes, his face filled with shock and disbelief. When he realized what had just occurred, his entire being trembled in anger, and his face flushed with redness, looking like a demon. You son of a bitch! How dare you mock me? Tianyang sneered at Gu Lim and spoke in a disdainful voice. Humph? You want me to hand over the god's fruit without payment, and you expect me to wait until we leave this place for my payment? You want me to trust you, who cannot even fulfill his own promises? Laughable. I already gave Kulas all the treasures we bet on. What more do you want me from? Gu Lim shouted, spewing saliva everywhere. Kulas interrupted. If I recall correctly, you promised to kowtow before him and call him grandfather for the rest of his life if he survived the trial. Yet, I have not seen you on your knees, much less call him grandfather. Kulas, you fucking bastard. If you think I won't beat you up because you're from a fellow immortal clan, you have made a huge mistake. Gu Lim pointed at Kulas, his entire arm shaking uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Tianyang felt a strange shift happening in his body. After eating the god's fruit, it was as if something had loosened up inside him, like unclogging a drain that had been blocked for decades. His body felt weightless as though gravity no longer affected him, and all of his senses became more sensitive and keen, allowing him to notice even the smallest details. Furthermore, he could feel his strength skyrocketing even though there were no changes to his cultivation base. This is me, at my highest potential? My body feels foreign as if it doesn't belong to me. Tianyang looked at his palms with a nervous smile on his face. You trash bastard. I dare you to step outside the safe zone and fight me. Gu Lim suddenly shouted as he stared at Tianyang with immense killing intent surging within his eyes. Tianyang narrowed his gaze at Gu Lim. Although he was never intimidated by Gu Lim even before consuming the god's fruit, now that he's essentially experienced a rebirth, he could tell that Gu Lim posed zero threat to him. Thus, Tianyang confidentially started walking towards Gu Lim. Seeing Tianyang's resolute expression, Kulas prepared to fight alongside him. The moment Tianyang stepped outside the safe zone, Gu Lim wasted no time jumping at him. Die, you insignificant bastard. So what if you consumed the god's fruit? You are still no different than trash in my eyes. Gu Lim swung his ancient grade sword at Tianyang. Tianyang only had an earth grade sword on him, so he didn't dare to block Gu Lim's sword head-on, fearing that his earth grade sword would break. Why don't you fight someone with proper equipment? Kulas suddenly appeared beside Gu Lim, kicking him away from Tianyang. When the four people following Gu Lim realized that a fight could no longer be avoided, they retrieved their divine-grade treasures and joined the battle. Two of them went after Tianyang while the other two went to assist Gu Lim. Meanwhile, the spectators there quickly distanced themselves from the fight. None of them wanted to stick their nose in a fight between the Immortal clans, nor did they have the qualifications to join the battle after witnessing how fierce it was. You've made a huge mistake offending the Immortal Gu clan today, you mortal dog. Even if you manage to get out of this alive, the Immortal Gu clan will never forgive you. The two cultivators fighting Tianyang cursed at him as they fought. Does the Immortal clans only know how to bully the weak? How pathetic. Tianyang sneered in disgust. The two cultivators anticipated an easy victory since they were ganging up on a single person, but they were greatly surprised when they realized that not only were they unable to land a single strike on Tianyang, but he was actually pushing them back. Serenity Sword Strike. Radiant Saber. The two cultivators began employing their martial techniques, but Tianyang dodged them with ease using just the basic movement technique taught by the Immortal Monastery. Is this all the Immortal clans are capable of? So, you're not so different than everyone else. Tianyang taunted them even further. You'll cut that filthy mouth of yours and feed it to the dogs. Although Tianyang could have killed them at any time, he decided to use them as training so that he could get used to his newfound strength. Once he was satisfied, Tianyang stopped messing around and exploded with strength. This caught his opponents off guard, and before they could even react, Tianyang extinguished one of their lives with a single sword technique. Immortal Rending Sword Strike. Tianyang's sword moved with such viciousness and power that his target's body was separated in half. When the other cultivator saw his friend being slaughtered in such a manner, he immediately lost all will to continue the fight and raised his hand while shouting, "W8! I give up." However, Tianyang acted as though he didn't hear anything and mercilessly swung his sword again. "You ba!" After killing his opponents, Tianyang turned to look at Kulas' situation. He was still fighting with Gu Lim, but the other two were nowhere to be seen, presumably dead. C1388 Darker Path. Chapter 1388 Darker Path. 1388 Darker Path. Kulas. Do you need my help? Tianyang asked him after his fight ended. Wah. What happened to Gu Yaju and Fu Lingxin? What did you do to them? Gu Lim roared at Tianyang when he couldn't see his friends around. Tianyang sneered, "Isn't it obvious that I killed them? You bastard." Gu Lim suddenly stopped paying attention to Kulas and charged at Tianyang. "We are not finished yet." Kulas immediately went to intercept him. "Get out of my way, Kulas. Do you truly intend on fighting to the death with me? My family will not let this slide even if it's you." Gu Lim roared at him. "Don't talk as if I started this. You were the one who approached us, provoked us. Don't you dare make it sound like you are the victim here, Gu Lim." Kulas shouted back, his strikes getting fiercer and quicker. Gu Lim began panicking at this point. He knew that he couldn't defeat Kulas alone. The sole reason for challenging Kulas in the first place had been the support of his group, but now, with them absent and dead, he found himself utterly helpless. As Kulas pushed Gu Lim further and further towards death, Gu Lim's desperation peaked. "Stop it. This isn't funny, Kulas. If you kill me, my family will not forgive you. Are you going to be able to handle the consequences?" Kulas halted his movements shortly after hearing Gu Lim's words. Sure enough, while he wouldn't have any problem dealing with Gu Lim's buddies, he couldn't directly kill Gu Lim himself, who was the young master of the Immortal Gu clan, as that could potentially lead to war between the Immortal Might clan and the Immortal Gu clan. "That's right, Kulas. You cannot kill me unless you want our families to go to war." It was as though Gu Lim could read Kulas' mind, showing a relieved smile on his face. However, just as Gu Lim felt safe, he sensed a presence suddenly appear behind him like a ghost. Wah! Gu Lim turned around, but before he could fully turn around to see who was behind him, he sensed a cold sensation breeze past his neck. Kulas' eyes widened with shock when he witnessed Tianyang kill Gu Lim without hesitation. "What have you done?" he swallowed nervously. "You couldn't kill him, right? In that case, I will do it for you." Tianyang said with a relatively calm expression on his face. Do you have any idea who you just killed? That was the young master of the Immortal Gu clan, their patriarch's favorite son. Once they learn of what happened here, they will hunt you down like a dog for the rest of your life. Tianyang shook his head and said, if I had let him live, he wouldn't let me scot-free, so it wouldn't have mattered if I killed him or not. They will hunt me down regardless, so I might as well take care of him now. Unable to refute Tianyang's logic, Kulas gritted his teeth. He looked at the shocked spectators and sighed, you could have at least waited until there's nobody to witness it, but now. Tianyang looked at the crowd and smiled, even if I killed him out of sight, these people have already seen us argue and fight with him, so it would only be a matter of time before they realize I killed him. Don't worry, Kulas. You weren't the one who killed him, so you can pin all the blame onto me. With so many witnesses here, I doubt his family will go through the trouble of blaming you. I couldn't care less about that. Why don't we continue our conversation somewhere else? Tianyang suddenly said. Sure. However, before leaving the scene, Tianyang made sure to take Gu Lim's spatial ring, just as he did with the other two he defeated. Once they were gone, the crowd that witnessed Gu Lim's death went into an uproar. This is huge news. Gu Lim is dead. Fuck. I can already imagine the Immortal Gu clan's reaction once they learn of this news. Who the hell was that person anyway? I don't recognize him. Unsurprisingly, nobody there recognized Tianyang, so even if they were questioned about him later, they would only be able to give a description of Tianyang's appearance and that he was Kulas' friend. Sometime later, Tianyang and Kulas stopped by a large boulder and continued their conversation. So what are you going to do now? Kulas asked. Tianyang lifted his head to stare at the clear sky and sighed, I honestly don't know. I have managed to reach my full potential and finally acquired the talent that I could only dream of, but what good is my talent when I am going to be hunted by the immortal clans? I must have somehow offended the heavens or something in my past life to have such terrible luck. Kulas pondered for a moment before speaking. How about joining my Immortal Might clan? Well, try to protect you from the Immortal Gu clan. Tianyang smiled and said, I appreciate the offer, truly. However, we both know that won't work. The Immortal Might clan has no reason to protect me and would rather give me up to spare them the trouble, especially since you are partially involved, and I doubt it'll just be the Immortal Gu clan that he'll have to worry about. In fact, you should probably stay away from me starting now. It would be bad for you to associate with me any longer since it would give the Immortal Gu family more reasons to go after you. Cut the bullshit. The only reason you are in this situation is because of me. Gu Lim wouldn't have provoked you if you weren't with me. Kulas exclaimed. He clenched his fists in anger until they bled, muttering in a shivering voice, what's the point of saving your life if I just lead you down an even darker path later? I'm such a terrible friend. C1381 Red Altar. Chapter 1381 Red Altar 1381 Red Altar, enough, Kulas. I'm glad that you saved my life. What happened to Gu Lim wasn't your fault. It's Gu Lim's own fault for picking the fight as well as mine for ending his life. Tianyang said with a calm smile on his face, almost as though he had already accepted his fate. Anyways, if you don't intend on leaving me alone, should we start making our way to the second section? Kulas nodded. So we'll finally start exploring the tomb for real now, huh? Do you know where to start? He shook his head. Nope. No clue. I guess we can just wander around like we did for the trials and hope for the best. Alright, but unlike the first section, there will be magical beasts and countless dangerous traps awaiting us. We have to move around with care. Tianyang nodded, that's obvious. He looked around and asked, by the way, which direction is the second section in? Kulas shrugged and said, no clue, but we can ask around. The two of them continued to wander until they came across someone. Excuse me, do you know where the second section is located? Kulas asked. Do you see that mountain over there? Keep moving in that direction until you see a red-colored altar. That will teleport you to the second section of the tomb. Thank you very much. Now with a new destination, Tianyang and Kulas followed the mountain's direction. 1 day, 2 days, 4 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Tianyang and Kulas traveled for nearly an entire month before they reached their destination. They stopped before a red altar, located at what seemed like the edge of the world. How do we activate this? Kulas inspected the red altar. Activate. Tianyang muttered out loud. Activate teleport. I guess not. Tianyang shook his head. What are you idiots doing? A clear voice suddenly resounded behind them. What? Tianyang turned around with a slightly surprised look on his face, as he couldn't feel their presence until just now. Not far away, a group of young ladies were approaching his direction. There were 4 of them, each being a world-class beauty that could topple kingdoms with their appearance alone. Kulas frowned when he saw these ladies, almost as if he recognized them. Chem? If it isn't Kulas. What a surprise. You had me believe that you didn't come to this place when I didn't see you at the beginning. The lady leading the group spoke when she saw Kulas. The group of ladies ignored Tianyang, walking right past him before stopping in front of Kulas. Where have you been? That is none of your business, Ren Xia, Kulas sneered with a hint of disgust within his tone. Of course it is. We are engaged to each other after all. The lady named Ren Xia said with a slight smile on her face. What an unfunny joke, acting like you actually care about that. What's that supposed to mean? In case you forgot, you were the first one to express your disapproval of our engagement. Tianyang watched their interaction with interest. He didn't know Kulas was engaged. Now that I think about it, he's from a prominent background. It would be weird if he wasn't engaged. If you're here to bother me, I won't entertain you, Kulas said with a slight frown. Ren Xia shifted her gaze from Kulas to the red altar beside him and spoke. Are you trying to activate the portal? Are you having trouble? Do you need me to help you? I'll help you if you ask me nicely. In your dreams, you annoying bitch. Kulas sneered in disgust. Ren Xia immediately frowned and said, as rude as ever, I see. If our parents had been here to hear that, you would have received a serious spanking. But since you refused my help, I would like to see how you'll activate it. Ren Xia turned to look at the ladies behind her and continued, ladies, let us take a break here. We might even see some funny things in just a bit. Kulas ignored them and walked to Tianyang. Just act like they don't even exist. Is it really okay to treat your fiancée in such a manner? Tianyang asked with a raised eyebrow. Don't let her appearance fool you. She's a sadistic and narcissistic bitch. And it was our family's decision to engage us. Kulas whispered to him. I can hear you, you know. Ren Xia said. By the way, who is that? A friend? No way, right? Even as Ren Xia voiced her disbelief, she couldn't fathom the idea of Kulas having a friend. Nevertheless, the truth remained that she had never witnessed him display such friendliness towards anyone else. So what if he's a friend? Kulas did not refute her, even confirming it. Seriously? A look of disbelief appeared on Ren Xia's face, as she didn't expect Kulas to admit it. Hey. I've been meaning to ask you this for a while now, but why is everyone so surprised when they find out you have a friend? Tianyang couldn't help but pose the question. A stiff smile appeared on Kulas' face as he responded, probably because I tend to push everyone away in the past. What do you mean in the past? You've done it your entire life. You always have this hard-to-approach aura around you, and you would immediately shoo away anyone that tries to get close to you. Ren Xia sneered after hearing his words. Hard to approach. Tianyang found that hard to believe. His first impression of Kulas was anything but distant. In fact, Kulas seemed overly friendly during their initial meeting, almost suspiciously so. Kulas blushed and said, I only act like that towards those unworthy of my respect. It just turns out that everyone around me is unworthy, until I met you. Worthy of your respect? Did you hit your head somewhere? Ren Xia had a dumbfounded look on her face as she asked him. Kulas narrowed his gaze at her and responded in a cold tone, Since you are my fiancée, allow me to give you a warning. The consequences of underestimating my friend are severe. Gulim learned that the hard way and paid with his life. What? Gulim is dead. Ren Xia's expression turned pale after learning of this information. C1382 Kulas Fiancé. Chapter 1382 Kulas Fiancé 1382 Kulas Fiancé, K. Kulas. You crazy son of a bitch. Don't tell me you killed Gulim? Do you have any idea what you have done? Ren Xia exclaimed with a look of disbelief on her face. The others behind her also covered their mouths from shock. However, Tianyang responded in Kulas' stead, No, he didn't kill Gulim. I was the one who killed him. What? You? Ren Xia shifted her gaze to Tianyang. She glared at him with a deep frown and asked, Who are you? Tianyang calmly responded with a smile on his face, I'm a nobody. Regardless of your identity, are you aware of the consequences of your actions? Gu Lim's family will stop at nothing to hunt you down. No, it won't just be his family. The other immortal clans will also get involved. So what? The smile on Tianyang's face suddenly flipped, and a cold expression appeared on his face. I already have a bone to pick with the immortal clans. If they weren't going to hunt me, I would have gone after them myself. Ren Xia's eyes widened with surprise after hearing his words. A mysterious smile appeared on her face, causing her beauty to blossom even further, and she spoke in a low voice. Not only are you not fearful of the immortal clans but you even dare to go against them. What an interesting man. When Qual saw the look on Ren Xia's face, his entire being trembled and he quickly stood between them. Whatever you are planning, give it up, he said to her. And what makes you think that I am planning something? You always make that annoying expression when you're planning something. Don't act like you are familiar with me. Tianyang shook his head and interrupted them. While you two argue, he'll try to figure out how to activate the altar. He ignored them and walked to the altar. Even if you don't help us, someone who knows how to operate it will eventually come, Kulas said to Ren Xia. Ren Xia chuckled. I can't believe you're struggling to activate the teleportation array. What? It's an array? Kulas' eyes widened. Ren Xia covered her mouth and acted like she accidentally spilled the beans. Oh my, I accidentally gave you the answer. Though it's not like you can do anything about it since you aren't an array master. However, Tianyang raised an eyebrow when he heard it. Array? He inspected the red altar in finer detail and sure enough, he could see array symbols engraved all over the altar. These are only level 1 array symbols. In that case, a few moments later Tianyang solved the array symbols and activated the array, causing the red altar to emit a crimson glow. The following moment, a red portal appeared before the altar. What? Ren Xia looked at him with surprise. You were an array master this entire time? Even Kulas was shocked. Tianyang shook his head and said, No, but I was taught the basics by someone. I never expected such knowledge to come in handy though. During his time with Huang Shaoli, she would occasionally teach him array symbols for fun. If Tianyang took the array master examinations at this moment, he would barely qualify as a level 1 array master. Anyways, now that I've activated it, let's go. Kulas nodded and walked past Ren Xia. Seeing this, Ren Xia didn't say anything else and followed them into the portal. After exiting the portal, Tianyang and the others found themselves in the middle of an expansive wilderness. Unlike the first section which was mostly empty plains and mountains, there were trees and living beings roaming around the second section. So where should we go? Huh? Tianyang and Kulas turned to look at the person who had just spoken. Why are you making it sound like we're going to be traveling together? Kulas asked her with a deep frown on his face. Why not? Ren Xia shrugged. Not only would it be more entertaining but it'll be safer if we traveled together. Are you going to refuse traveling with 4 beauties? What does your appearance have anything to do with this? Regardless, I don't trust you guys. Kulas sneered. Are you afraid that we might attack you or something? We don't have any reason to do such a thing. Ren Xia said. And what reason do you have for wanting to follow us? Ren Xia's gaze glanced at Tianyang's figure for a split second before responding. We're all tired of looking for Han Zexian's legacy, but it's not like we can return home until we find it, so we might as well fool around for a bit. I don't care about your reasons. You're not going to follow me. Kulas said. Ren Xia shook her head and sighed. Who said we are going to follow you? Ren Xia turned to look at Tianyang and continued, This place is crawling with people from the immortal clans. I'd like to see how you will deal with them. Of course, I'm not asking you to let us follow you for free. I can be your guide and even lead you to a few places with treasures. You bitch. I dare you to say that you don't have any ulterior motives now. Kulas narrowed his eyes at her. Are you jealous that I, your fiancé, have taken interest in another man? Ren Xia chuckled. I couldn't care less who you talk to or even sleep with since I don't have any feelings for you, but you better not mess with my one and only friend. Tianyang narrowed his eyes at Ren Xia. He had a feeling that even if he refused her company, she would still follow him. In that case, he might as well accept her offer and get something out of it. I don't mind if you follow us, but if I sense you doing anything that could harm us, I will not hesitate to cut you down, he said in a cold voice. Ren Xia nodded with an innocent smile. I swear that we won't do anything like that. C1383 Ren Xia. Chapter 1383 Ren Xia 1383 Ren Xia. Hey. Tianyang. Tell me you aren't seriously going to let them follow us? She's a crafty woman with ulterior motives. Kulas asked him through divine sense. Tianyang sighed, responding, we might as well, unless you can convince them to not follow us. That's impossible. She's the type of woman to do whatever she wants. The only way to stop her would be to kill her. Are you suggesting that we kill your fiancé? There aren't any witnesses here after all. Oh, of course not. As much as I dislike her, I cannot justify killing her over something like this. Right? Then we might as well let her follow us and guide us to the treasures. I guess. Kulas sighed inwardly, feeling defeated. Also, they don't know my identity yet. Call me Xiao for now. Tianyang suggested. Okay. Meanwhile, the ladies were having a conversation of their own through divine sense. Sister Rin, why do you want to follow them? Are you trying to avenge young Master Gulim? Gulim? I couldn't care less about that idiot. I'm more interested in Kulas' friend. Ren Xia said. That man? What? He's essentially a wanted criminal at this point for killing Gulim. Yeah. It'd be unwise to associate ourselves with him. What if the Immortal Gu clan comes after us too? That won't happen. Ren Xia said in a confident tone. She continued, I also want to see what kind of person is worthy of Kulas' acknowledgement. But I don't think that is worth offending the Immortal Gu clan. Ren Xia looked at them and sighed, I am not going to force you to follow me, nor will I blame you for leaving. This is my own selfish action after all. The three ladies exchanged glances with each other. After a moment of silence, they lowered their head to Ren Xia and said, Sorry, Sister Ren, but we cannot afford to offend the Immortal Gu clan. We hope for your understanding. Ren Xia shook her head, I already said that I won't blame you. Are you sure you want to follow them? You'll be alone. If you're afraid they'll do something to me, why don't you stay? If not, stop with the pointless worry and leave already. The ladies bowed to her again before leaving. Tianyang was surprised when Ren Xia's group suddenly left her alone. I thought they were friends? He shook his head inwardly. When she noticed the gazes on her, Ren Xia looked at them and shrugged. Unlike me, those girls don't come from a background that is powerful enough to stop the Immortal Gu clan, so they cannot afford to offend them. Moreover, you won't be as worried about my presence if I am alone, right? Sure enough, Tianyang no longer had to worry as much now that Ren Xia was alone, as he was confident in dealing with her if any problem arose. I'm more interested in these treasures you mentioned. Tell me about them. Tianyang said a moment later. Just like the first section, there are trials scattered around this place. Anyone can challenge these trials, but only one person will be able to acquire the reward. Moreover, these treasures are not limited to the tomb, so we can bring them to the outside world with us. Ren Xia explained. What kind of treasures are we talking about? Kulas asked. Ren Xia didn't respond, acting as though she didn't even hear his question. This bitch is ignoring me on purpose. Kulas stared at her with a cold gaze. So, what kind of treasure can we earn from these trials? Tianyang asked a moment later. From spiritual weapons to powerful techniques. Ren Xia responded with a calm smile on her face. Techniques? Tianyang's eyes shone with excitement after hearing this information. He lacked three things before entering the tomb. Talent, treasures, and techniques. After spending nearly an entire year in the first section of the tomb, Tianyang solved his talent issues, and acquiring Gulim's spatial ring somewhat solved his treasure issue. The only thing he lacked at the moment was powerful martial techniques. I only know some basic techniques from the sect, with the immortal rending sword strike being the strongest amongst all the techniques I know. Although I may have some talent now, I will still be at a huge disadvantage against those with similar strength but superior techniques. Do you know any trials that award techniques? Tianyang then asked. Several, she nodded. I want to visit these places first. Okay. Ren Xia nodded. It'll take us to the nearest one first. Follow me. As they followed her, Kulas asked, what are the chances that someone has already cleared these trials? And how long has it been since you left this place? Ren Xia pretended to not hear him again. How dare you so blatantly ignore me? Do you truly believe that I won't touch you because you're my fiancé? Kulas gritted his teeth and clenched his fists in anger. However, Ren Xia continued to ignore him. Seeing this, Tianyang sighed inwardly before speaking. I'd like to know as well. I left this place for about 2 months. Although it's not impossible, the chances of these trials being cleared are incredibly low. In fact, compared to the trials in the first section, the trials here are on another level of difficulty. Tianyang swallowed nervously after learning of this information. Ren Xia continued a moment later, with that being said, not every trial will kill you. You'll know what I mean once we arrive at our destination. By the way, we'll get there faster on a flying treasure. You have one? Ren Xia looked at Tianyang, who quickly shook his head. Then I'll share mine with you. Ren Xia retrieved her flying treasure that looked like a living white crane before patting the space in front of her with a charming smile on her face. Tianyang immediately hesitated to share a ride with her. Kulas then said, "Ride with me instead." As Tianyang turned to look at Kulas, he summoned a large white tiger. Tianyang frowned upon seeing this and exclaimed, "You had a flying treasure this entire time? Don't tell me it's the expensive kind that doesn't require replacement once it runs out of spiritual energy." "It is," Kulas calmly confirmed. "You rascal. Why didn't you bring this out earlier when we were in the first section? It could have saved us so much travel time." Tianyang shouted in frustration. Kulas responded with a teasing smile, "You never asked." C1384 Stone Sword. Chapter 1384 Stone Sword. 1384 Stone Sword. Tianyang held a look of disbelief on his face after hearing Kulas' response. Seeing this, Kulas couldn't help but burst out laughing. Ren Xia silently watched their interaction with widened eyes. She was skeptical that Kulas and Tianyang were friends at first, but after seeing their interaction she had no choice but to believe it. Moreover, she has never seen Kulas laughing so heartily before. Sometime later, Tianyang jumped on Kulas' flying treasure and started following Ren Xia. The white swan fluttered its wings and flew in the sky like a real being while the white tiger ran in the sky, almost as though there was an invisible platform for it to traverse. If one saw them from a distance, they could easily be mistaken for authentic magical beasts. The flying treasures moved at extreme speeds, much faster than the flying treasure used by the Huang family during their escape. Furthermore, it didn't require as much spiritual energy from the user to maintain top speed. They were incomparably better than ordinary flying treasures. The only downside of these flying treasures would be their astronomically high price tag, something even extremely wealthy families would not dare consider buying more than one. Within half an hour, Tianyang and his group covered a distance that would typically take them a month if they had traveled normally. When Tianyang realized how much time they had wasted in the first section, he felt a strong urge to smack Kulas in the back of his head, but he eventually controlled his urges. After another half an hour, Ren Xia's flying treasure quickly slowed down to a halt. "We're here," she said, her gaze pointing at the large sword in the distance. "What is that?" Tianyang mumbled in a dazed voice as he used divine sense to take a closer look. Several miles in the distance, a sizable stone sword appeared, seemingly thrust into the ground. On closer inspection, one could discern engraved words on the blade, each character seemingly etched with the precision of a sword stroke. "We call it Han Zexian's stone sword, and we believe that it's trying to pass down a profound sword technique." Han Zexian was known to be a powerful sword master with hundreds of terrifying sword techniques at his disposal, so it's likely that this is one of them. Tianyang swallowed nervously. He could feel an unfathomable aura emitted by the stone sword even from such a distance. When they got closer to the stone sword, Tianyang noticed tens of thousands of cultivators were sitting in front of the stone sword, their gazes glued to its blade. However, unlike the first section, there was no protection from the tomb to safeguard these people while they tried to comprehend the technique within the stone sword. "I don't wield the sword, so I won't bother trying to comprehend it," Kulas suddenly said. He turned to look at Tianyang and asked, "How long do you think it'll take you to comprehend it?" Tianyang looked at him with raised eyebrows. "Why are you making it sound like I am guaranteed to comprehend it? Countless people must have tried to comprehend it for the past year, but it's still here. If anybody can comprehend it, it'll be the only person who managed to clear a Jade difficulty trial." Kulas smiled. "What?" Ren Xia turned to look at Tianyang with wide eyes. "You cleared a trial from a Jade altar?" He calmly nodded. Ren Xia was left speechless upon learning this information. She knew a few people from the Immortal clans also took the Jade altar's trial, but none of them survived. Just who is this man? He can't be a mere nobody, Ren Xia thought to herself. A moment later she spoke, "Now that I think about it, we never had a proper introduction. I'm Ren Xia, youngest of the Immortal Sword clan. Xiao, a rogue cultivator." Tianyang lied like it was in his nature. A rogue cultivator? Ren Xia instantly knew that Tianyang was lying, but she had no proof. Is he worried that I will expose his identity to the Immortal Gu clan? Well, I don't blame him for being cautious. She decided to play along. As they got closer to the stone sword, Ren Xia warned, There won't be any safe zone in this place, so make sure you don't focus entirely on the stone sword and forget about your surroundings. With that being said, nobody would dare to cause a commotion that could disturb everyone here. Kulas then said, don't worry about your safety and focus on the stone sword. Watch your back. Tianyang nodded and took a seat before the stone sword a moment later. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he reopened them, they were completely focused on the engravings on the stone sword. How long do people tend to stay here? Kulas asked Ren Xia a moment later. Are you seriously going to continue ignoring me? Why are you acting so childish? She glanced at him and sneered, says the one who ran away from home a year ago. I did not run away. I merely went on a journey to find out my own path. Whatever you say. After a moment of silence, Ren Xia continued, most people leave within a month if they don't see any progress, while some have been here for over 6 months. And how does this trial work? Does the stone sword go away once someone comprehends the technique? Kulas asked. That's what happened to the others. There is more than one stone sword. Not just stone swords. There are sabers, axes, bows, all kinds of weapons. Huh. Why does he have so many different kinds of techniques? I also never heard of Han Zixin wielding anything other than swords. It's widely known that Han Zixin had multiple identities, but the exact number remains a mystery. Only a few are aware and we lack confirmation, but there's a belief that one of Han Zexian's many aliases was Ambiguous Hoarder, Ren Xia disclosed through divine sense. Ambiguous Hoarder? Are you sure? Kulas was shocked to learn this information. Like I said, we don't have proof, but after seeing the unfathomable amount of treasures in this place, I would be willing to bet on it being true. Ren Xia sighed. C1385 Ambiguous Hoarder. Chapter 1385 Ambiguous Hoarder 1385 Ambiguous Hoarder Ambiguous Hoarder. If this information is true, this tomb is much more precious than originally anticipated. Kulas swallowed nervously after learning of this information. The Ambiguous Hoarder was a mysterious individual who was known for collecting all sorts of valuable treasures and techniques in the divine heaven about 5,000 years ago. He would often show up at auction houses and expensive stores, emptying their stock and storage. If he wasn't at auction houses, he would be approaching people directly to purchase their valuables with offers that were hard to refuse. Nobody knew why the Ambiguous Hoarder needed so much treasure nor where he acquired the wealth to purchase so much treasure. The Ambiguous Hoarder was active for 500 years before vanishing like a ghost, and people believed that he had the largest collection of treasure in the entire world. When the Ambiguous Hoarder vanished without a trace alongside his treasures, people believed that he had perished and began searching for his remains. But alas, even after spending countless resources and many decades searching, they remained empty-handed. If Han Zixin is truly the Ambiguous Hoarder, that technique might be here. Kulas turned to look at Tianyang. The Ambiguous Hoarder had a specific technique that Kulas had always wanted to learn, but it was only a pipe dream since nobody knew where the Ambiguous Hoarder had disappeared to. However, if Han Zixin turned out to be the famous Ambiguous Hoarder, he might actually have a chance of acquiring said technique and fulfilling his dreams. The only problem was that Head promised Tianyang that He'd travel with him, so he couldn't just leave by himself. 1 month. I will only wait for a month, so you better comprehend the technique by then, Tianyang. Kulas gritted his teeth and suppressed his urges. Meanwhile, Tianyang continued to stare at the engravings on the stone sword without blinking. Time slipped away swiftly, and in the blink of an eye, a week had passed. Throughout this period, Tianyang tirelessly recited the engravings in his mind hundreds of times each day, witnessing rapid growth in his comprehension of their meaning. Unbeknownst to Tianyang at that time, his true talent did not lie within cultivation but in an entirely different domain. On the 10th day of his study, Tianyang abruptly entered a trance-like state. Though he continued reciting the engravings in his mind, it was now happening subconsciously. The atmosphere around Tianyang began to change. It was subtle and barely noticeable at first, but it grew increasingly profound and noticeable. No way, is that? Ren Xia doubted her eyes at first and even rubbed them before taking another look at Tianyang. Enlightenment. Kulas sucked in a cold breath of air after realizing what was happening to Tianyang. Even a genius like him had never experienced enlightenment before. Don't tell me that he'll actually comprehend the stone sword's technique? Ren Xia swallowed nervously before muttering in a dazed voice. Although it took some time, the people around Tianyang eventually noticed the weird atmosphere around him and shifted their focus away from the stone sword to focus on Tianyang. Am I seeing things? How long has it been since he started studying the stone sword? He was already here when I arrived a week ago. He wasn't here 2 weeks ago. A small commotion erupted around Tianyang that quickly spread like wildfire until it inevitably disturbed everyone there. Who is that young man? I don't recognize him. Me neither. Look at the profound atmosphere around him. He must have come from a powerful background. That's called enlightenment, you ignorant one. One's background has nothing to do with it. In fact, it's not something even the geniuses in the immortal clans could bring forth at will. Despite the envy that many harbored towards Tianyang's situation, nobody dared to disturb him. It was an unspoken rule to never interrupt someone in a state of enlightenment, a state believed to be bestowed by the heavens. Therefore, anyone breaking this rule was considered to be defying the will of heaven and inviting its wrath. Furthermore, given the rarity of enlightenment, being able to witness such a phenomenon could be considered a stroke of good luck. No sane person would intentionally disrupt an event that most individuals go their entire lives without witnessing. Since Tianyang entered enlightenment, time appeared to have slowed down. Eventually, after 3 days of profound silence, a shift occurred, and a semi-transparent sword materialized above Tianyang, slowly orbiting around him. After another 3 days had elapsed, a second sword manifested above him, followed by a third 2 days later. Each of these swords exuded an otherworldly aura, almost as if they existed between the boundary of their world and another. On the 9th day since Tianyang entered his enlightenment, the fourth and final sword materialized above him. 4 otherworldly swords orbited around him, endowing him with a divine presence, as though he had transcended into a sword divinity. The swords vanished as Tianyang opened his eyes. Simultaneously, substantial cracks surfaced on the stone sword before them, eventually causing it to crumble into a mountain of stones. Shortly after Tianyang emerged from his enlightenment, the people there snapped out of their daze and approached him, bombarding him with the same questions. What sword technique did you acquire from the stone sword? Please, tell us its name. What rank is this technique? I'm willing to purchase the technique from you. Give me a price. *pap. *A clapping sound loud enough to stun everyone there suddenly resounded, startling everyone there. When they turned to look at the person who caused the commotion, they saw an old man with a group of young people behind him. That's the sect leader of the 7 Divine Sword Peaks. Nearly everyone there immediately recognized the old man's identity, who was the leader of one of the most prestigious sects in the divine heaven. C1386 7 Divine Sword Peaks. Chapter 1386 7 Divine Sword Peaks 1386 7 Divine Sword Peaks 7 Divine Sword Peaks. Even a nobody like Tianyang has heard of their name. The 7 Divine Sword Peaks stood as a formidable powerhouse in the divine heavens, ranking within the top 3 among all sections. Boasting several golden immortals within their ranks, they were renowned for their prowess in producing accomplished sword masters. The elderly man guiding the group held the esteemed position of sect leader in this powerful sect, a renowned sword master named Tang Jian. When Tianyang saw Tang Jian approaching him, he stood up and asked, "What do you want?" "This rude bastard. Watch your mouth. Who do you think you are talking to?" The people behind Tang Jian glared at him. Tang Jian raised his arm and gestured for his disciples to calm down. He then spoke in a calm yet overbearing tone, "I am Tang Jian, sect leader of the 7 Divine Sword Peaks, and I would like to know the name of the technique you acquired from that stone tomb." Tianyang did not immediately respond, and a moment later he spoke, "I don't know." Tang Jian narrowed his eyes, causing the atmosphere to change. "Do you really expect me to believe that when you comprehended the technique?" he asked. "The stone tablet only taught me the technique, not its name." Tang Jian had a hard time believing Tianyang's claim because most if not all people who passed down their techniques wouldn't leave out something as important as its name, as that would be throwing out its very identity. "In that case, can you show me the technique itself?" Tang Jian asked a moment later, as he would be able to identify the technique through its movements. However, Tianyang quickly responded without an ounce of hesitation in his voice, "Unfortunately, I do not have enough spiritual energy to perform the technique. I only entered Peak Spirit King, and this technique requires me to be at least Spirit Sovereign." This little brat. Tang Jian could feel his blood warming up. He has seen his fair share of bold individuals throughout his life, but he has never encountered someone as daring as Tianyang. Are you mocking our master? The audacity. I'm going to cut you into 100 pieces. The people behind Tang Jian suddenly withdrew their weapons. Before Tang Jian could even react, Kulas appeared between them and Tianyang and said, even if you are from the 7 Divine Sword Peaks, I won't sit still if you're going to harm my friend. Who the hell are you? You can die with him if you want. The disciples did not recognize Kulas. All of you halt. Tang Jian suddenly shouted, releasing an overbearing pressure that froze everyone in their tracks. He released the pressure a moment later and spoke. He is the young master of the Immortal Might clan. If any of you wish to proceed after learning this fact, I won't step in to defend you if anything goes wrong. What? He's from the Immortal clans? The disciples immediately began sweating after learning of this information. Ren Xia suddenly entered the scene and said with a profound smile on her face, is the righteous 7 Divine Sword Peaks going to bully a single individual over a technique that had acquired fair and square? Fairy Ren. Is he also a friend of yours? The disciples immediately recognized her identity this time. Tang Jian's eyebrows twitched at Ren Xia's question, which brought up their honor and status as a righteous sect. If they continued to pressure Tianyang in front of so many people, their honor would be damaged and their righteousness would be questioned. Lady Ren, your words are quite harsh. Since when did we bully him? I am merely interested in the technique he learned and inquired about it. Since he is unable to answer my questions, I will leave it at this. We will depart now. Tang Jian turned around and began walking away. At the same time, Tang Jian's voice resounded inside Tianyang's head, you have made a grave mistake today. Pray that we don't encounter each other again. Omicron M. Hearing this, Tianyang sneered inwardly, whether it be the young master of the Immortal Gu clan or the sect leader of a powerful sect, they love to abuse their authority and mess with the powerless. How are they any different than bandits that terrorize the innocent? Unfortunately, due to this encounter, he now found himself burdened with the concern of the 7 Divine Sword Peaks pursuing him, adding to the already looming threat from the Immortal clans. Fuck, I swear the heavens are still messing with me. Tianyang looked at the sky with a gaze full of resentment. Let's quickly get out of here. Kulas said to Tianyang through divine sense. They quickly left the scene on their flying treasure shortly after. I can't believe you actually dared to mess with the 7 Divine Sword Peaks. Their sect leader, no less. Why didn't you just tell them about the technique? It's not like it would kill you to answer. Kulas sighed out loud. If had approached me differently, I wouldn't have minded telling them. However, he was haughty and overbearing even before he started speaking. Regardless of his title, he was no different from a wild bandit in my eyes, and I won't entertain a bandit even if it kills me. Tianyang sneered. Ren Xia laughed out loud. Ha! I cannot believe you. I doubted you had the guts to offend the Immortal clans, but after seeing how you dared to pick a fight with one of the most powerful sects in the world, their sect leader, no less, I have no other choice but to believe it. Kulas ignored Ren Xia's words and asked Tianyang with a curious look on his face. So? What kind of technique did you learn? You can tell me, right? Tianyang nodded and calmly responded, Limitless Sword Domain. Limitless Sword Domain. Kulas exclaimed in a shocked voice. Even Ren Xia had a look of disbelief on her face, her eyes wide like saucers. C1387 Limitless Sword Domain. Chapter 1387 Limitless Sword Domain 1387 Limitless Sword Domain. You've heard of this technique? Judging by Kulas' reaction to its name, Tianyang already knew the answer to his own question even without needing a response from Kulas. Of course. Anyone who knows even the slightest about Han Zishan would know of the Limitless Sword Domain technique. It's one of his signature moves, a technique Head used to destroy the infamous burning demonic sect overnight. Kulas exclaimed. If you've really learned that technique, you've struck gold, Xiaoyang. Do you think you can show it to me? However, Tianyang showed a bittersweet smile on his face and sighed. When I told the 7 Divine Sword Peak sect leader that I lacked the capability to use the technique in my current state, I wasn't lying. The best I can do is create 4 swords and control them like flying swords. It's pathetic when compared to what the stone sword showed me. What did the stone sword show you? Kulas asked in a nervous voice. A man that covered the sky with hundreds of swords manifested with spiritual energy and commanded each of them simultaneously, as if there is a sword master controlling each sword individually. Tianyang sighed with a look of admiration on his face as he recalled the images he saw during enlightenment. The man, presumably Han Zexian, conjured hundreds of swords made of pure spiritual energy, infusing them with sword aura. When he unleashed them upon his target, it created the illusion of the heavens themselves meting out punishment. It was a grandiose display of unfathomable prowess and talent, something Tianyang wanted to achieve one day. "Hey, I have something to tell you," Kulas suddenly said with a serious look on his face. "What is it?" "Have you heard of the Ambiguous Hoarder?" Tianyang nodded. "He was a mysterious collector several thousand years ago that vanished into thin air, correct?" "He wasn't just a collector. He had the most expansive and valuable treasury in the world. There's a good chance that Ambiguous Hoarder's true identity is Han Zexian." "What?" Tianyang's eyes widened with surprise. "No wonder why all sorts of valuable treasures and resources exist in this tomb." Kulas nodded and continued, "Now here's what I actually wanted to tell you. The Ambiguous Hoarder was known to have a certain technique meant for body refiners such as myself. This technique could grant one a nearly indestructible body and amplify their innate strength immensely. If the Ambiguous Hoarder, Han Zexian, left behind something as valuable as the Limitless sword domain, I have no doubt he also left behind that technique." "You want to learn it, right?" Tianyang asked. Kulas nodded with a serious expression and said, "Originally, I only came here to train myself, but this information changed everything. If you don't mind, I would like to spend some time looking for it." Tianyang responded with a calm smile on his face, "Of course. Let's focus on your technique for now then." "Are you sure?" "What about your journey?" Kulas asked. "What are you talking about? We're traveling together, so this isn't my journey alone. I have already benefited immensely thus far, and you've been following me this entire time, so it would only be fair for me to follow you now." "Thank you." Kulas showed a bright smile. Tianyang shifted his gaze to Ren Xia and spoke, "You heard our conversation. Do you know anything about it?" Ren Xia contemplated for a moment before responding, "If it's related to body refiners, it must be a body refining technique. I'm aware of 3 stone tablets that suggest such a technique." "Can you show us the way?" Tianyang asked. "They'll show you one of them for free, but it'll need some sort of payment for the rest." "But you said that you'd show us if we allowed you to follow us." Tianyang frowned. "I was only talking to you. Since this is something that directly benefits Kulas, I won't be doing this for free." Kulas sucked his teeth in an annoyed manner and said, "Fine, I'll pay you if the first one isn't what I want." Ren Xia showed a beautiful smile and said, "Very well. Follow me. I'll take you to the nearest one first." A few hours later they arrived before a massive stone tablet that did not take the shape of any weapons, and just like the stone sword, there were thousands of people studying it. Kulas clenched his fists with excitement and said, "Give me 1 month. If I cannot comprehend its name by then, we will move on to the next one." Tianyang nodded and said, "I will watch your back. Omicron, thanks. Then I will be right back." Kulas immediately sat before the stone tablet and stared at it with a serious expression on his face. Tianyang sat right behind Kulas and started cultivating. Due to how fast he advanced his cultivation to the peak of Spirit King, it had yet to fully stabilize. Of course, he didn't fully immerse himself in cultivation, as he still had to protect Kulas even if the chances of someone bothering him were close to 0. Shortly after Tianyang settled into his seat, he sensed someone sitting right beside him, and a sweet, flowery scent enveloped his senses. "How did you two meet?" Ren Xia's voice suddenly resounded inside his head. As much as he wanted to ignore her, he couldn't ignore that she was the reason he learned Limitless sword domain. "By chance. He found me when I was dying in the desolate continent and saved my life. Xiao, isn't it? You're a fascinating individual. The more time I spend by your side, the more I sense that you're truly unique." Ren Xia wore a charming smile as she gazed at him. Tianyang looked at her and asked, "Why are you so cold to Kulas?" "He's your fiancé, no?" "Sure, a fiancé that was chosen by my family, and neither of us actually want to be with each other. Honestly, our engagement is bound to fail." Kulas ran away from his family because he did not want to be tied down by our engagement, but if he hadn't done so, I would have done it. As for why I mess with him, it's just another means of entertainment. Even though he's always cold towards others and seems unapproachable, many are aware that he's actually a very kind man inside, but that's exactly why we won't ever work out. I am more interested in men who are reckless, someone who is uncontrollable like that of a wild beast. Is that so? Tianyang responded nonchalantly. Ren Xia narrowed her eyes at him, seemingly in deep thought. C1388 The Technique's Name. Chapter 1388 The Technique's Name. 1388 The Technique's Name. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye since Kulas started studying the stone tablet. Ren Xia also stopped bothering Tianyang and tried to comprehend the stone tablet. Even though she wasn't a body refiner, it would still benefit her greatly if she learned the technique. Tianyang spent a week solidifying his cultivation and started studying the stone tablet as well, and it only took a week for him to learn the name of the technique engraved in the stone tablet. Golden Mountain Body Refinement. As much as he wanted to continue learning the technique, he didn't want to steal it from Kulas, so he stopped studying the stone tablet after learning its name and returned to solidifying his cultivation. In the third week, Kulas finally learned the technique's name, but he only expressed disappointment afterward. This isn't the technique I am looking for. Let's head to the next one, he said to them through divine sense. In case you forgot, I won't give you the information for free. Ren Xia reminded him. Kulas glared at her and sighed, what do you want from me? A profound smile appeared on her face as she spoke, I want information on your friend. Tell me his real name and I will give you the location of the second stone tablet. You fucking bitch. You want me to sell out my friend? In your dreams. Kulas was immediately enraged by Ren Xia's demands. Why are you so angry? Just a name. Ren Xia calmly shook her head. Regardless, you already know his name, so why even bother asking? Stop taking me for a fool, Kulas. I know Xiao is not his real name. If you are worried that I will sell him out to the Immortal Gu clan, you need not worry, as I don't particularly like them either. And you expect me to believe you? Since Kulas and Ren Xia were talking to each other through divine sense, Tianyang did not know what they were talking about, but he could tell that Kulas was in a tough situation judging by the expression on his face. What kind of payment does she want? He decided to ask Kulas. She wants me to tell her your real name. Tianyang pondered for a moment before speaking. Go ahead, tell her. Are you sure? What if she sells you out to the Immortal Gu clan? Or the 7 Divine Sword Peaks? It's fine. They will learn of my identity sooner or later. I understand. After receiving his permission, Kulas revealed Tianyang's real name to Ren Xia, who wore a bright smile on her face afterward. Tianyang, huh? Cute name. Ren Xia spoke to Tianyang in a teasing tone. The next location. Tianyang glared at her. Of course. Ren Xia proceeded to guide them to the next location, which took 3 days of traveling on their flying treasure. The second location also had a stone tablet, but this one was slightly smaller than the last. Kulas immediately took a seat and started studying the stone tablet. Tianyang and Ren Xia did the same, but Tianyang stopped after learning its name 4 days later and focused on his cultivation. 2 weeks later, Kulas learned its name and was met with disappointment again. What do you want as payment this time? Kulas looked at Ren Xia. In response to his question, Ren Xia retrieved a scroll from her spatial ring and handed it to him with a calm smile on her face. I just need you to sign this. Kulas took the scroll and read it. Tianyang could read some of the contents from his position and couldn't help but take a peek. Agreement to dissolve engagement. She wants to break their engagement. Tianyang swallowed nervously after realizing the situation. He glanced at Kulas' face with curiosity, and to Tianyang's surprise, Kulas was grinning from ear to ear. And without any hesitation, Kulas signed the paper with his blood. He wasn't joking about not wanting to marry her. Tianyang thought to himself. Kulas returned the paper to her a moment later and stated, just so you know, even though I signed this paper, the ultimate decision rests with our family. This is good enough, Ren Xia said. After putting away the scroll, Ren Xia retrieved her flying treasure and led them to the final location. Just a reminder that this will be the last location that I know of, Ren Xia remarked. A few days later, they reached the third location, where a colossal statue featuring an animal resembling an elephant stood majestically. Whoa! Tianyang couldn't help but express his awe for the statue. This might be it. Kulas' entire being trembled in excitement when he saw the statue. He hastened towards the statue and began studying it intently. In contrast to the prior trials, the number of people examining this statue was several times greater, surpassing even the crowd at the stone sword. 1 week. 2 weeks, a month elapsed in the blink of an eye. However, Kulas remained unable to learn the name of the technique. Please give me a little more time. I think this is the technique I have been looking for. Kulas looked at Tianyang. Take as much time as you need, he replied. Thank you. 2 more months passed. It had been 3 months since they arrived at the stone statue, but Kulas was unable to comprehend the name, let alone the technique. Fuck. Kulas cursed inwardly with a defeated look on his face. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but he couldn't have expected to be so powerless before it. Is this my limit? Am I not fated to learn this technique? Damn it all. He cursed inwardly as he looked at the sky with a disheartened expression. Eventually he gave up and said, I'm done here. Is this not the technique you were looking for? Tianyang asked him as he seemed so sure of it at the beginning. I don't know since I can't even learn its name, he sighed. After a moment of silence, Tianyang spoke. The technique is called Great Mammoth Body Refinement. Is this the technique? What? Kulas was so shocked when Tianyang revealed the technique's name that he expressed it out loud, disturbing the scene. C1389 Great Mammoth Body Refinement? Chapter 1389 Great Mammoth Body Refinement 1389 Great Mammoth Body Refinement? Hey! Which son of a bitch shouted just now? Are you looking for a fight? Fuck. I swear I was on the verge of understanding the technique's name. Kulas' loud voice quickly caused a commotion with many people expressing their desire to fight him because of it. However, when they realized that their opponent was the young master of the Immortal Might clan, their attitude took a 180 turn. They closed their mouths and returned to studying the stone statue, acting as though nothing had happened. My apologies, everyone. It will not happen again. Kulas did not forget to apologize to these people. Once the place calmed down again and everyone returned to studying the stone statue, Kulas looked at Tianyang and asked him through divine sense, did you say the technique's name was Great Mammoth Body Refinement? Please tell me you're not messing with me. How would I know the technique's name if I'm toying with you? It's definitely Great Mammoth Body Refinement. Tianyang confirmed. But how? Oh. I don't know how to explain it, but I studied the stone statue until I learned the technique's name. Of course, I stopped immediately afterwards since I didn't want to take it away from you. Kulas swallowed nervously before asking him, and how long did it take you to learn the name? I learned it on the 17th day, he calmly responded. It only took you a little over 2 weeks to comprehend the name? Kulas was speechless as he was unable to do such a thing even after spending 3 entire months trying. Anyways, judging by your reaction, this is the technique you have been looking for, correct? Tianyang asked. He nodded, yes, this is the technique. Unfortunately, I am not fated to learn it. Tianyang looked at the stone statue with a pondering face. After a moment of silence, he said, what if I try to learn the technique and pass it down to you afterward? Of course, I cannot guarantee that I have what it takes to. Will you really do that for me? Kulas was so excited by Tianyang's words that he accidentally spoke out loud again, followed by hundreds of angry gazes. Sorry. I will leave this place now. Kulas left the area before anyone could utter a word, feeling quite embarrassed by his uncontrollable outbursts. Once he was far away, Kulas continued speaking with Tianyang through divine sense. If you can really help me acquire the technique, I will give you my life. Tianyang smiled and calmly responded, there's no need for such a thing and you have already helped me enough. I'm not sure how long it will take for me to learn this technique, but I will start right now. Take as much time as you need. Sometime later, Ren Xia asked Kulas, have you given up already? Yes, he admitted. Then what about Tianyang? He suddenly started to study the stone statue for real. Kulas explained the situation to her. I do not have what it takes to learn this technique, but he might have a chance. If he successfully learns the technique, he will teach it to me, so we'll be staying here a little longer. You can leave whenever you want, though. Ren Xia's eyes widened after learning of the situation, and she turned to look at Tianyang with a pondering expression on her face. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it had been 2 months since Tianyang started studying the stone statue seriously. On the 69th day, the stone statue, which had remained unchanged for an unknown duration, suddenly began exhibiting cracks throughout its massive body. Then, before everyone's shocked gaze, the stone statue crumbled into a mountain of rubble. Kulas stood up with a look of disbelief on his face as he mumbled in a dazed voice. He really did it? Once people started snapping out of their daze, they immediately began looking for the person who comprehended the technique. Who is it? Who learned the technique? Can you share the name of the technique? I would like to purchase the technique. I have an offer that you will not be able to refuse. However, since Tianyang did not enter enlightenment or display anything that would prove he learned the technique, nobody there except Kulas and Ren Xia knew that fact. Tianyang, please tell me you were the one who learned the technique. Kulas spoke in a desperate tone. Tianyang didn't respond to him with words but with a silent and calm smile. Seeing this, Kulas immediately felt elevated as though he was in heaven. After sneaking out of the crowd, Tianyang and his group quickly disappeared without being noticed. Sometime later, Tianyang and his group settled in a secluded area where they were the only living beings in a 1,000-mile radius. I have the technique but I don't know how to teach it to you. Do you have any technique that will allow me to transfer my knowledge to you? Tianyang asked Kulas. Actually, I do. It's called Technique Transmission and I have the manual right here. Kulas retrieved a scroll and handed it to him without hesitation. Okay, let me learn this technique first then. Tianyang proceeded to spend the next several hours learning the technique. Once he was prepared, he used Technique Transmission on Kulas, transferring the technique of Great Mammoth Body Refinement to Kulas. Upon confirming that he had indeed received the correct technique, Kulas kowtowed before Tianyang and exclaimed with sincerity, "Starting from this moment, we will be sworn brothers. Will you accept me as your sworn brother?" Tianyang chuckled and said, "Why bother asking when you have already decided that we'll be sworn brothers just like when you decided that we'll be friends? Stand up, brother Kulas." "Thank you, brother Tian." Unbelievable. Ren Xia was speechless. If forming a friendship with Kulas seemed improbable, being acknowledged as sworn brothers with him was nothing short of a miracle. Yet, Tianyang, someone who was not from any influential background, was able to achieve such a feat. C1390 Han Zexian's Legacy. Chapter 1390 Han Zexian's Legacy. 1390 Han Zexian's Legacy. After learning the technique, Kulas immediately sat down to cultivate. "Give me a few days," he said before closing his eyes and meditating. While they waited for him, Ren Xia suddenly spoke to Tianyang through divine sense. "Hey, there's something I'd like to talk to you about." "What is it?" Tianyang looked at her. "There's this technique that I really want to learn but I only managed to learn its name. Do you think you can try learning it for me? Of course I will compensate you properly. I don't mind." To Ren Xia's surprise, Tianyang agreed to help her without any trouble. In Tianyang's mind, he wasn't losing out on anything since he would get paid to learn a new technique. "Thank you. It's only 2 days from here. You can thank me after I learn the technique since it's not guaranteed that I will learn it." Tianyang notified Kulas about their plans before leaving the scene with Ren Xia. 2 days later, they arrived at another stone sword. The name of this technique is Ethereal Blossom Sword Dance. Ren Xia said to him, as it might help him understand the technique a little faster. Tianyang nodded and started studying the stone sword shortly after. 2 weeks later, the stone sword collapsed, signifying that someone had successfully learned its technique. Ren Xia's body trembled with delight when she saw this. As they made their way back to Kulas, Tianyang transferred the technique to Ren Xia. "What do you want for payment?" "If there's anything you want, I will try to acquire it," said Ren Xia. Tianyang pondered for a moment before responding, "Does any kind of payment work? What if I want you to do me a favor?" "That is fine too. Then can I save this payout for a later date when I need to use it? I cannot think of anything right now." Ren Xia reached for her spatial ring and retrieved a badge from it, handing it to Tianyang the next moment. "This is my medallion. You can keep it until you can think of something." "Thanks. I should be the one thanking you." Ren Xia showed him a beautiful smile, one that felt natural and genuine. When they returned to Kulas, he was still in mediation. As they got closer, they could sense Kulas' aura more clearly, and it was incomparably stronger than before. Kulas opened his eyes when they landed, greeting them with a smile. "Welcome back. How do you like the technique?" Tianyang asked him. "I couldn't have asked for anything better. This technique suits my physique perfectly, as if it was created for me." He turned to look at Ren Xia and asked, "So, what kind of technique did you smooch off my brother?" Ren Xia frowned at his choice of words and sneered, "Unlike a certain someone, I am going to pay for my technique with something that's actually of value. That's natural. You're just an annoying bitch leeching off him while I am his sworn brother." Two of them started arguing with each other at that point. Sometime later, Tianyang asked, "What should we do now?" "I don't need anything else from this place, so it's up to you," said Kulas. "I will have to regroup with my family soon, so I have to leave." Ren Xia sighed. I would like to learn more sword techniques, but I am also interested in the other trials. Unfortunately, we don't have a map of this place. Hearing his words, Ren Xia retrieved a piece of jade slip from her spatial ring and handed it to him. This is an interactive map of this place, so it's constantly being updated with new information. Everyone from the Immortal clans has one. Expect this useless idiot over here who came to this place alone. Ren Xia said as she glanced at Kulas. Oh, in that case you don't need to give me yours since I have Gulim's spatial ring. He looked inside and sure enough there was the jade slip. This is very helpful. Thank you. Tianyang was delighted after seeing the information within the jade slip. Their biggest headache was instantly solved by it. Wait a minute. You have Gulim's spatial ring? You know his family is tracking his location, right? Ren Xia said, wondering how the Immortal Gu clan hadn't tracked him yet. You don't have to worry about that since I got rid of the tracker long ago, Kulas said in a prideful tone. As a young master from the Immortal clans, he knew the way their families operated and that Gulim would have a tracker on him. Is that so? Over the next several months, Tianyang followed the map in the jade slip and learned as many sword techniques as he could. Ren Xia continued to follow them until she had to leave a few weeks into their journey. While Tianyang learned sword techniques, Kulas spent his time mastering the Great Mammoth Body Refinement technique. Once Tianyang was satisfied with the techniques he had learned, he started training them on magical beasts. Even though everyone in the tomb was limited to peak Spirit King, there were magical beasts at the Spirit Emperor level. However, Tianyang had Gulim's treasures and learned several powerful techniques, allowing him to fight even early-level Spirit Emperor magical beasts with ease. In the blink of an eye, another year passed. During this time, Tianyang completely solidified his cultivation and increased his proficiency with his new techniques. If he were to encounter the gold and money bandits in his current state, he would be able to wipe them out with little to no effort. Kulas managed to increase his body size through the Great Mammoth Body Refinement technique, allowing him to grow several sizes larger, but his most impressive improvement was his raw strength. Furthermore, news of Han Zexian's legacy being found had spread like wildfire, but it was sealed behind an indestructible door and nobody has been able to figure out how to open it. Chapter 1391 Han Zexian's Legacy, 2. Chapter 1391 Han Zexian's Legacy, 2. 1391 Han Zexian's Legacy, 2. Hey brother Tian, wanna check out Han Zexian's Legacy? Kulas suddenly suggested one day during their training. Tianyang raised an eyebrow and said, that place is most likely crawling with people from the Immortal clans. We don't have to look at it closely. We'll only be going there to look at the sealed entrance, you know? As far as I know, nobody has been able to open it. We are only a few hours away from it, so we might as well go take a look. If you say so. Tianyang nodded. Kulas retrieved his flying treasure, and they set out toward Han Zexian's Legacy, following the directions provided by the jade slip. They stopped moving a few hours later when they encountered a massive mountain standing majestically in the middle of an empty plain. This mountain was so incredibly conspicuous that it could be spotted from miles away, yet it wasn't found by anyone until a year ago. However, those who have been to this specific area before swore that the mountain did not exist when they passed through this area over a year ago. Many speculated that the mountain had appeared after a specific condition had been met, but that condition remains unknown to this day. A large group of people were gathered at the base of this mountain, all of them surrounding a massive sealed door. This door seemed to be made from some sort of metal, and its color was pitch black, as dark as the void. Suddenly, a dozen of these people flew into the air and started bombarding the mountain with powerful martial techniques, causing the entire place to shake. The identities of the people in this group consisted of renowned experts from powerful families and sects, all of them having an immortal cultivation base outside the tomb. Yet, no matter how much they attacked the mountain, they were unable to leave behind a scratch on the mountain, let alone destroy it. These experts stopped attacking after consuming all of their spiritual energy and rested for a few hours. Once they restored enough spiritual energy, they started bombarding the mountain again, using powerful treasures this time. How long have they been doing this? Tianyang couldn't help but wonder out loud. Kulas shrugged. Who knows, but knowing their stubborn nature, they've probably been at it for a long time now. Hey, look over there. That annoying woman is there as well. Kulas pointed at the conspicuous beautiful young lady in the crowd. Even in a sea of people, Ren Xia stood out like the mountain in front of her. She looks bored. Tianyang smiled. Suddenly Tianyang heard a familiar voice inside his head. You who was qualified to find my legacy approach the mountain. Han Zexian's voice resounded, beckoning him to seek the legacy. Tianyang swallowed nervously. Even if he wanted to approach the mountain, he couldn't do so without being noticed by the Immortal clans. The Immortal Gu clan must be aware of Gu Lim's death by now. If I go there in my current appearance, they will, without a doubt, recognize me. Unfortunately, he used up all of his appearance-reforming pills long ago. He turned to look at Kulas, who was his last hope, and asked, "Do you happen to have any appearance-reforming pills on you?" "Nope, I have never even touched one in my life." Kulas immediately shook his head. "What? Do you want to hide your face and take a closer look at the mountain?" "Well, Han Zexian just spoke to me in my head and he wants me to approach the mountain." "What? If that's true, you might be the key to opening the sealed doors." "That won't matter if I cannot even get close to it." Tianyang sighed. Kulas looked at the crowd again and said, "The Immortal Gu clan is by the entrance, so it'll be impossible for you to get close without being noticed by them." Tianyang then said, "Even if I somehow manage to hide my face, having you by my side will still give my identity away. Forget it. We can come back later when the Immortal clans give up. That will probably take years. What if someone else takes the legacy before then?" Kulas said with a bittersweet smile. "I'll take my chances. Let's return to training." Tianyang said. "If you say so." However, just as Kulas turned around and sped away, an invisible force stopped the flying treasure from moving. What's going on?" Kulas was puzzled when the flying treasure came to an abrupt halt, and it was not as if it had run out of spiritual energy. Did something happen? The flying treasure, it's... Before Kulas could even finish his sentence, the invisible force pulled it, sending it flying toward the mountain. What in heaven's name? The flying treasure crashed into the mountain a moment later, and Tianyang and Kulas were knocked off it, falling to the ground and landing directly in front of the sealed doors. Who dares? The Immortal clans were startled by their sudden and rough entrance. The experts there immediately released their pressure as a precaution. Wait. It's me. Kulas raised his hands and said. "Aren't you Kulas from the Immortal Might clan? What are you doing here?" The people there quickly recognized him. However, their focus on Kulas was short-lived, as these experts quickly noticed that the sealed doors, which had remained closed for the past year regardless of their efforts, had inexplicably opened. The experts were so shocked by this phenomenon that they didn't even bother giving Tianyang a single glance and rushed to the doors. "The door to Han Zexian's legacy has been opened," the experts announced with excitement as they entered the door. However, the moment the first person to enter the door took a step inside, his entire body exploded into a bloody mess, terrifying the others behind him. Sect Master Cheng. Oh my heavens. What happened? Suddenly Han Zexian's voice resonated loudly, his anger reverberating through the surroundings. "Those who lack the qualifications yet dare to seek my legacy will be met with a swift death." C1392 Consequences. Chapter 1392 Consequences. 1392 Consequences. After Han Zexian's warning, the experts who were prepared to enter the mountain immediately jumped back, distancing themselves from the open doors that were smeared with blood. Sect Master Cheng, who was a silver immortal, was instantly killed without any warnings. Seeing such a shocking scene, nobody else dared to enter the mountain. Fuck, if I had been first to enter. The experts that were following behind Sect Master Cheng began sweating profusely as they imagined themselves dying an explosive death. This must have been a trap. The door wouldn't open no matter what we did, yet it suddenly opened out of the blue. I don't believe in such coincidences. But we cannot ignore the qualification that Han Zexian spoke of. How does one even receive qualification? The experts racked their brains trying to find an answer. However, none of them could think of any logical explanation for their current situation. Suddenly, one of them turned to look at Kulas with narrowed eyes. Now that I think about it, the door unsealed itself when Kulas smacked into the mountain with his flying treasure. Do you think he activated a switch by accident? We've been smacking the damn mountain non-stop for the past few months, leaving no spot untouched. Are you telling me that we somehow missed a spot? That's highly improbable. Why did you even smash into the mountain in the first place, Kulas? One of them asked. Honestly, I have no idea. I was passing through this area when an invisible force stopped my flying treasure, and before I knew it I was flying into the mountain. Kulas shrugged. Hearing this, the experts started mumbling to each other again. Sometime later, someone in the crowd suddenly shouted, Patriarch Gu. That person beside Kulas. It's him. He's the one who killed young Master Gu Lim. What? Are you sure? One of the experts snapped his head to glare at Tianyang with immense killing intent spewing out of his eyes. Oh shit. Tianyang swallowed nervously when he realized that had been identified as Gu Lim's killer. To this bastard. If I had known he was Gu Lim's killer, I would have killed him at that time. Another expert suddenly exclaimed as he pointed at Tianyang. This person was the sect master of the 7 Divine Sword Peaks, who wanted to acquire the technique Limitless Sword Domain from Tianyang. Kulas, why are you with the man who killed Gu Lim? A middle-aged man who resembled him stepped forward with a deep frown on his face. Young Master Kulas was also there when that man killed young Master Gu Lim. In fact, they were fighting each other before it happened. Another person suddenly revealed. What? Kulas, is this true? Are you involved with Gu Lim's death? His father was enraged when he heard this. Kulas found himself bombarded with questions, compounded by the various pressures bearing down on him. Even if he desired to respond, he couldn't muster the ability to open his mouth in such a situation. However, Tianyang was different, and he managed to keep a calm expression on his face even in his situation. Indeed, I am responsible for killing Gu Lim, Tianyang announced in a somewhat prideful tone. While it's true that Kulas was fighting with Gu Lim before I killed him, he had no intention of actually harming Gu Lim. It was solely my decision to kill Gu Lim who mocked me. Brother Tian, what are you doing? Kulas looked at him with wide eyes as he spoke through divine sense. What do you mean? I already said that I would claim all responsibilities. Don't even try to protect me or I will never call you brother again. Tianyang showed a calm smile on his face. How dare you speak of killing my son with a smile on your face? I will fucking kill you. Patriarch Gu roared in anger as he abruptly charged at Tianyang. Under normal circumstances, Tianyang wouldn't stand a chance against the patriarch of an immortal clan, but with Patriarch Gu's cultivation limited to Peak Spirit King, Tianyang managed to not only dodge the strike but even counterattack. Limitless Sword Domain. 10 majestic swords materialized around Tianyang and immediately went after Patriarch Gu. After training the technique tirelessly for an entire year, he managed to increase the number of swords he could create from 4 to 10. Patriarch Gu didn't dare to underestimate the technique after sensing its formidable aura, but he still failed to block all 10 swords. After blocking 9 swords, one of them managed to slip through his defenses, severing half of his left arm. Fuck. You little shit. Patriarch Gu's aura exploded and his eyes turned red. However, even after the successful attack, Tianyang was unable to rest for a second because the sect master of the 7 Divine Sword Peaks had launched a sneak attack from behind him. Tianyang did not try to block it and evaded it instead. After narrowly dodging the sneak attack, Tianyang rushed toward the entrance to Han Zexian's legacy. Thank you for everything, Brother Kulas. If it weren't for you, I would have died on that day. If I manage to get out of this alive, I will definitely repay you. Tianyang mumbled as he flew past Kulas. Omicronim, that bastard is heading for the entrance. He's trying to suicide. Stop him. I won't be satisfied until I personally skin him alive. Patriarch Gu shouted. However, none of the experts dared to approach the entrance, as Han Zexian's warning still resounded in their heads. Even Patriarch Gu, who was desperate, couldn't move his body out of fear. Without hesitation, Tianyang entered the entrance, disappearing inside the mountain. What? Why didn't he die? That bastard. He must have acquired the qualifications. Is that why the door suddenly opened? He was the cause this whole time. A moment later, Tianyang's voice resounded from inside the mountain. Come chase after me if you dare, you fucking losers. Fuck the immortal clans. Fuck the 7 Divine Sword Peaks. I will acquire Han Zexian's legacy and kill all of you bastards. Just you bastards wait. Tianyang's words left the experts enraged, but before they could curse back, the door to the mountain sealed shut again, cutting his connection with the rest of the world. I swear upon my surname that I will not let you leave this place alive. Patriarch Gu roared as he punched the sealed doors so hard that he broke his knuckles. Sometime later, once the atmosphere calmed down a little, the experts turned to look at Kulas with deep frowns on their faces, looking as though they were staring at a scapegoat. Kulas, you will answer all of our questions if you value your life. You will tell us everything you know about that bastard and how he acquired the qualifications to enter the mountain. I will torture you for answers if I have to. Don't think your status can save you now. Hearing such words, Kulas looked at his father for help, but alas, he only received a disappointed head shake in response. Even if he was the Immortal Might clan's young master, there was nothing his father could do to help him without receiving backlash from the other clans. I'm sorry, son, but we cannot afford to offend everyone here. You may hate me for not protecting you, but this is a mess you created, so you will have to bear the consequences. Kulas' father decided to abandon him so that the rest of the family wouldn't be targeted by the others. As the head of the family, he had a duty to prolong the family, even if he had to sacrifice his own son to do so. Thus, Patriarch Gu and several other experts dragged Kulas to a secluded location, where they would interrogate him using all sorts of unspeakable methods for a long time. Meanwhile, unaware of the situation outside, Tianyang walked deeper into the mountain, embraced by the surrounding darkness. Soon, a dim light appeared in the distance, and as he got near the light, a childish voice resounded. Master, it's been 6 hours. The next trial will begin shortly. Tianer said, snapping Yuan out of his memories and back to the present. He stood up with a profound look on his face and said, You can start the trial now. C1393 A Truly Priceless Treasure. Chapter 1393 A Truly Priceless Treasure 1393 A truly priceless treasure. As the second trial commenced, Yuan found himself teleported to a vast, empty land. There was nothing in sight except for a tree line that surrounded him several miles away, with nothing between him and the trees. Tier 1, 0 out of 100. Tier 2, 0/1000. Tier 3, 0/10,000. Tier 4, 0/100,000. Tier 5, 0/1,000,000. Yuan's eyes widened with shock when he saw how many opponents he needed to defeat for the Tier 5 reward. 1,000,000? In just 6 hours? He expressed his disbelief out loud. The very next moment he could see thousands of figures coming out of the tree line, and they charged at him like a horde of monsters. When Yuan saw the appearance of these people, he immediately frowned, and his aura gushed with killing intent. These individuals bore the unmistakable appearance of bandits. They were none other than the Gold and Money Bandits, a group that he despised to the very core of his soul. Each of these bandits emitted the cultivation of a divine warrior, from the first level all the way to the peak of divine warrior. Yuan took a deep breath and flew into the air, stopping only when he was right beneath the clouds. The bandits chased him into the air. Even though Yuan was surrounded by thousands of divine warrior bandits in every direction, he remained composed with a nonchalant expression on his face. After taking a deep breath, he waved his sleeves and used a sword technique that had recently remembered. Limitless Sword Domain. In the blink of an eye, 2,000 swords materialized in the air, covering the entire sky. Even Han Zexian was only able to create several hundred swords at his peak as a golden immortal. Yet, Yuan had managed to create twice as many while only being a spirit king. Furthermore, each of his swords was imbued with enhanced sword aura, so they were also incomparably much stronger. Limitless Sword, First Domain, Endless Sword Stream. The 2,000 swords began to dance in the sky, attacking the bandits relentlessly. Tier 3, 1/230/10,000. In just a few seconds Yuan effortlessly slaughtered over 1,000 bandits, and as he defeated a bandit, another one would appear from the tree line, so he had an endless supply of bandits to experience his wrath. Tier 4, 19/213/100,000. Tier 4, 39/716/100,000. Tier 4, 69/532/100,000. Tier 5, 101/987/100,000. Yuan had reached the last tier of rewards in only 20 minutes, achieving it much quicker than had expected. I will complete the trial in a little over 3 hours at this rate. The Limitless Sword Domain is much stronger than I anticipated. Although it consumes a tremendous amount of spiritual energy, I have no problem keeping it up for 3 hours. Limitless Sword Domain. Rank, Mythic, Mastery, Level 1, Description, consumes 25,000 chi per second for every sword created using this technique. Overwhelm your enemies with sheer numbers and unfathomable strength. Increase the damage of each sword by 1% for every sword active. If it weren't for Yuan's monstrous cultivation speed, he wouldn't have been able to maintain the technique for more than just a few minutes. Of course, this doesn't mean Yuan was stronger than someone at the Golden Immortal realm. One's understanding of the sword also contributed to the number of swords they could create using Limitless sword domain, and Yuan's sword mastery simply outclassed Han Zexian. And while Yuan's spiritual energy capacity may be nowhere near Han Zexian's capacity as a Golden Immortal, his cultivation speed made up for the disparity as long as he didn't create too many swords at once. As long as he doesn't control over 2,000 swords at once, he would have no problem maintaining the technique for an eternity. A little over 3 hours later, the green scenery turned into that of a horror scene where countless corpses piled as high as mountains with the bottoms submerged in a sea of blood. Tier 5, 999, 999/1000000. After killing the 999,999th bandit, the atmosphere became quiet as no more bandits spawned. However, a threatening presence appeared a moment later, and a single figure emerged from the sea of blood. This person looked exactly like the Gold and Money Bandits leader, and he had the cultivation of a third-level Divine Master. Yuan glanced at the bandit leader with a disdainful look on his face. He raised his hand toward the heavens and muttered in a cold voice, "Limitless sword, second domain, descending sword god." The 2,000 swords suddenly merged into a giant sword. When Yuan struck his hand down in the bandit leader's direction, the giant sword descended from the sky with unfathomable pressure and prowess. Seeing this, the bandit leader released all of his cultivation and swung at the incoming sword, creating a powerful blade made of saber aura. However, since the giant sword was strengthened with enhanced sword aura, the bandit leader's saber aura was powerless against it and shattered like thin ice. The giant sword crushed the bandit leader's figure the very next second, leaving nothing behind. 2. An orb of light appeared in front of Yuan a moment later. This orb of light slowly approached Yuan, but it didn't enter his body like usual. The orb of light stopped right in front of Yuan and began weakening its glow until it revealed the treasure hidden within. Yuan's eyes widened with shock when he saw this treasure that was a single ring. He quickly grabbed the ring and pressed it against his chest, embracing it. Huang Xiao Spatial Ring, Grade, Spirit. Description: an ordinary spatial ring owned by Huang Xiao. Even though the reward may seem insignificant and pointless to most people, it was a priceless and irreplaceable treasure in Yuan's eyes, and he wouldn't ask for a better reward even if he could. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.